This man was soaking in the bath when three girls suddenly rushed into his room. They had been sent by the princess to help wash the guest, and perhaps soothe his desires too. Was this what paradise felt like? Had the gods finally chosen to repay him for all his suffering? A few months before the world came under attack, his girlfriend told him their relationship was over. She said Mang had no real future ahead of him, and that he was not worthy of marrying someone like her. After 5 years together, everything between them ended just like that. The blow crushed him so badly that the MC left his awful job and shut himself away at home, spending his days doing nothing but playing games. Still, this man had one remarkable skill. He was the top player in Pangania, a game so punishing it made Dark Souls seem almost harmless. In this game, even NPCs could turn against you and bring you down. Once you die in the game, every bit of progress disappears. You are forced to begin again with a completely new character. Every quest feels like a gamble with your life. The only benefit is that whenever your character is lost, you gain soul points in return. Those points can be used to strengthen the stats of your next character. Our protagonist is a lonely man who has fallen far from his best days. He has spent years endlessly grinding through this game and has accumulated millions of points. Then, when he finally makes his first character with every stat raised to the maximum, something happens that no one has ever seen before. His computer screen suddenly turns a deep red. A voice tears through his mind until he loses consciousness. This time, however, he will not merely control his character. He will exist as that character himself. If he dies or fails the mission, his death will be real. He wakes up to a sharp crack and burning pain across his back. He is warned that if he collapses again, he will become food for the Hydragon. The truth still has not fully reached him. But when he sees the slaves crossing the desert, his memory returns. He does not want to accept what he is seeing. A Hydragon is transporting both cargo and slaves. The mercenaries hit him again. If he wants to stay alive, he has no choice but to keep walking. Mang finally grasps the situation he is in. This is the opening scenario of the game. This place is exactly like Pangania, so if the rules are the same, he cleverly says the magic words, status window. A system screen materializes in front of him. Mang can hardly believe that it actually worked. Window shows all his attributes at 12, along with several active and hidden talents. There is no doubt anymore. He is inside the game world. If he dies here, it means character death, and that means he has become the character himself. And he notices something odd. Stats should only range from 1 to 10, so why are his at 12? On top of that, what exactly are these 13 hidden talents? He has no chance to think further. The ground begins to shake violently. Ayang has no what is going on. Even the mercenaries appear just as clueless. In the distance, the Desert Queen's army comes rushing across the horizon. A woman arrives riding on dragons. Her mere presence fills the soldiers with fear. The MC is shocked because he knows who she is. She is the Snake Princess, someone he has seen before. At that moment, the system sends out an alert. The main quest has now been created. He must survive to earn valuable rewards. If he dies here, his body in the real world will die as well. Fear finally takes hold of him. His life is now truly hanging by a thread. A rain of arrows is fired high into the air. Slaves have no way to protect themselves or run. Mayong goes still as he realizes his life is in real danger. Terror locks his body in place, but the moment his face is injured, Meng's thoughts suddenly become clear. More than that, the injury awakens his first hidden ability, the Monarch's Heart. Arrows strike the slaves, and the soldiers now move in to finish the rest. Mang has to escape from his chains. Luckily, the keys are nearby. One soldier is already closing in on him. In this world, one clean sword blow can end everything. But Mayong seizes the sword from the fallen soldier. The instant he grips the blade, a fierce power flows through it. The soldier who raises his weapon against him never even notices the slaves slip past and strike first. He falls before he can react. At that moment, Mayong has only one path left. He must rely on Master of Arms, the talent that awakened as soon as he held a sword. He cannot allow himself even a single mistake. More soldiers rush in. Mayong cuts through their advance, breaking their weapons and disabling them one after another. A bald soldier's spear is sliced cleanly apart. Mayong immediately snatches up the broken point. He throws at another soldier, bringing down a second bald man. The masked mercenary also moves in to attack. Mayong slips away from the strike. Then he realizes he is seeing something beyond ordinary sight. Blue line appears, revealing weak spots in the enemy's guard. This has to be another hidden talent. Then, with one perfectly aimed motion, he drives his attack straight through the mercenary. Mayong has become a terrifying force, yet nearly 500 soldiers still surround him. There is no way he can handle them all without wearing himself out. Their numbers are far too great to take on at once. Mayong receives a notice that his sword proficiency has risen to level 6. His spear skill follows the same path, also climbing to level 6. Such rapid growth is clearly far from normal, yet even with all of these advantages, more than 500 soldiers still remain. Sometime earlier, the Snake Princess is elsewhere. A woman of even greater beauty asks why the expedition to the demon world ended in failure. Her words sound like both a question and a warning. The princess merely admits that the mission failed. The queen says that if people learn Faisalmer sent no troops, the fools of the central continent will pin the failure on them. The Snake Princess must travel to Kaltzman Desert and sign silence every participant in the expedition. They need to erase every trace proving Fazalmer sent no troops, along with anything connected to the failure. The queen promises to remove her curse if she succeeds this time. She kneels, then quietly says she understands the command. This time she will make another mistake. As commander, she waits for the soldiers to report that everyone has been defeated. Instead, one soldier says a final slave is still refusing to fall. The princess cannot understand how a slave could possibly withstand a soldier. In truth, he did far more than simply resist. He had actually left the soldiers unable to fight back. They number 500, fear has now spread through them all, even while he struggles to catch his breath. A system message appears, announcing that he has reached level 2. Mang refuses to let himself die here. Then one of his talents restores his exhausted body. This is exactly what he needs. Now he can stand against them all. Naturally, the soldiers cannot help being afraid. This leaves the princess with no choice but to enter the battlefield herself. Mang had never imagined he would end up seeing her from such a close distance. Isabella von Derzian, known as the Serpent Princess. The system reveals that she is level 8 and cannot leave the area because of the Queen's curse. After confirming her level, Mang understands that surviving a direct fight with her is impossible. In this world, anyone below level 7 is weak, while reaching level 8 places someone among the world's strongest. In this game, only major bosses and faction leaders are ranked at level 8. Standing before her feels no different from an ant facing a lion. However, something else draws Mang's focus, and it is not the girl's body. What catches his eye is the system message saying she is affected by a curse. The woman gets off her mount and declares that the NPC's little performance ends here. With each step she takes, Mang senses her aura growing stronger. If he wants to live, he has to come up with something immediately. He is regarded as the best player in this game, and not only because of his control skills. He understands the game's lore better than anyone else. Just as Isabella moves to strike him down, he asks whether she truly wants to remain bound by the Queen's curse. Mang stakes everything on that single line. Her blade halts. It worked. She has taken the bait. The woman fixes her gaze on him, unable to grasp how he could know such a secret. She urgently wants to know who he really is. Mayung says he is the star bearer and claims he can help lift the Queen's curse, freeing her from this desert. Isabella is shaken even more deeply by his word. It succeeds. The girl accepts what he says. Mayung knows that star bearer is an NPC class needed to advance beyond the normal level limit. The class is meant only for NPCs, so he clearly is not the real one. Still, breaking the Queen's curse requires the blessing of the stars. Since she longs to escape the curse, she has no choice but to hear him out. The reason he is certain she wants freedom from the curse is actually very simple. Isabella von Derzian is a character he created himself. She was an unlucky character he ended up neglecting because she began from the wrong starting point. The Queen's curse is a game mechanic designed to keep players inside the starting area early on. Yet a player character is meant to reach the ending, which requires traveling across the world. Instead, he left her here, sealed away by the Queen's curse. Isabella asks the protagonist for his name. Mayung answers that his name is Randolph, and with that his character's name becomes Set. The two look at each other in silence with intense tension hanging between them. Then Isabella turns aside and says she will delay taking his life for the moment. However, if his words prove false, she will make him pay dearly. She then commands her people to escort him, saying he is an honored guest who must be handled with great care. The survival mission is cleared. Soon after, the system starts calculating his results. Randolph rises as the system announces that he has achieved a perfect score and broken records. The constellation of fortune smiles on him and boosts his rewards, while the constellation of battle admits it was decent. He receives a broken golden scale piece, Hydragon's soul, and Michela's sword. Randolph sinks to the floor, thinking in disbelief that he somehow managed to survive. Slowly opens his half-closed eyes. He has gained 220 points in total, and his achievement will be recorded in the Hall of Fame. That night, inside the castle, Randolph relaxes in an elegant, luxurious bathtub. He studies the status windows floating before him. Randolph notes that Hydragon's soul is famous for dropping only once since launch, while Michela's sword is considered essential for the early game. Even so, he wonders what the broken golden scale piece is, and what synchronization between reality and Pangea is supposed to mean. All of a sudden, several maids open the door behind him. They ask whether he would like them to help wash him. Randolph says they may wash only his feet, while wondering if they are already trying to test him. The girls begin carefully rinsing his feet. Randolph realizes they are Isabella's chambermaids, and any visible reaction from him could make them suspicious. Since the star bearer is supposed to show no response to any stimulus, he tells himself to stay calm. Still, he keeps his eyes steady. His gaze ends up resting on one of the girls. Startled by himself, he quickly opens his attribute window. This time, however, he notices that something has changed. He wants to understand what this strange border between reality and Pangea truly is. A new window appears right in front of him. The Hall of Fame notice states that he has entered the survival rankings and unlocked the logout feature. The girl calls out to the one who carries the star. Randolph cannot believe this is even possible. Gracia and I Love Mint Chocolate were players he had teamed up with before. He assumed they had left after vanishing, but it seems they were summoned instead. And as if that were not enough, the logout function is now available to him. He realizes he may finally be able to escape this cursed game, so he tells the maids to stand down, saying he must speak with the stars. He warns that if he fails to contact them in time, his powers will disappear, then asks whether the princess would really want that. One maid is rendered completely speechless. Randolph tells them to inform Isabella that he will meet her after the communication is over. With that said, the room door shuts behind him. Randolph mutters in relief that, thankfully, the excuse actually worked. He had feared he might remain stuck in this place forever. He decides he will never set foot in this game again. Then he presses the logout button. The system starts logging him out, but warns him to leave his character somewhere safe. If his character dies there, his real body will suffer the same fate. After that, he manages to log out of the game successfully. Once back in his room, he hears distant sounds outside. Flames are spreading through the city. People rush through the streets, crying out for help. A monstrous mantis stands at the center of the flames. Disaster warning suddenly blares from a phone. Randolph wonders what on earth is happening. He looks through the window and sees the mantis outside. The creature shrieks the moment it spots him. Randolph drops to the floor, swearing under his breath. He cannot understand why monsters from Pangea are appearing in the real world. Just then, something slips out of his pocket. The golden scale has followed him back. Every event that happened before rushes back into his mind. He grabs his chair and realizes this is truly his room. Maybe he had simply fallen asleep after playing Pangea for too long. Of course, something like that could not really happen. His life is not a manhwa, so none of it makes sense. It had to be a dream. But then he sees the pouch and the scale lying in front of him. He wonders whether those items were always in his room, terrified by the possibility that everything was real. He slips the scale into his pocket and wonders what the game has given him. However, the page no longer exists, and a notice tells him to contact customer support. Randolph thinks the page must have disappeared while he was not paying attention. And voices outside begin shouting about a monster and begging for help. People are running from a giant praying mantis that is throwing the city into chaos. Several people have already lost their lives. Meanwhile, police officers announce an emergency after multiple unknown monsters appear. Randolph's phone vibrates with a new notification. He wonders what it could be this time. The same scene seems to repeat as he questions why monsters from the game are here. He wonders whether the barrier between reality and Pangea has finally collapsed. He also has no idea what he should do now. His hand brushes against the artifact beside him. Protagonist notices that something about it has changed. He thinks that if monsters from the game can now roam freely, then perhaps the items gained inside the game can exist here as well. Michaela's sword and hydrogen soul come out from his bag. The protagonist wonders how he is supposed to use them, since in the game, a double click was enough. He recalls the system screen he saw earlier. At that moment, the answer finally comes to him. There is no way he can take on those monsters himself, but he activates the function to synchronize with Randolph. The golden scale fragment has 24 hours left. In a city torn apart by devastation, mother races forward with her child held tightly in her arms. Little girl asks where her father is and why he has not come, while her mother gently says he will arrive soon. Without warning, broken debris begins crashing down toward them. The child is flung away from the impact zone. Her mother lies trapped beneath the rubble, hurt but telling her daughter she is fine and must run away quickly. An office worker comes over and asks if they are okay. The mother says she is all right, but begs the woman to take her daughter away. The office worker shuts her eyes, filled with sorrow. Even so, she apologizes and vows that she will protect the girl no matter what. Then the woman turns around. A gigantic monster is standing right behind her. As its huge jaws move closer, the woman wonders if this is where her life ends. But at the final instant, a sword crashes into the ground and brings the monster down. A moment later, Randolph appears beside the fallen creature. He cuts the praying mantis apart in a flash. The woman's face reddens as she wonders whether she is truly still alive, and she cannot help wondering who this man could be. The mantis suddenly rushes toward her. The woman cries out, trying to warn Randolph. The creature's attack misses completely. The secretary is left wondering what just happened. Behind him stands a dragon with 9 heads. Randolph climbs up onto the monster's head. He tells the woman not to move from that spot. The woman is startled by his firm order. She begins to stammer, unsure whether she is dreaming. Yunji runs straight toward her mother. The secretary glances over as her father comes closer, and the woman looks back again. She watches Randolph defeat a dozen mantises as if it is nothing. Monsters appear across the entire world, not only in Korea, taking lives and leaving civilizations in ruins. Yet monsters are not the only arrivals. Warriors also appear, able to defeat them and remain unharmed by bullets. Armor forms over a man's shoulder. He tells everyone not to be afraid because he will protect them. As the world changes at terrifying speed, one man calls them fools for wasting their golden scale pieces. Assassinato draws out his scale, now certain that reality and Pangea are merging. With chaos arriving, everyone becomes a rival, and those who collect the most golden scale pieces will lead this new age. The ranking that had stayed unchanged for 2 years finally shifts, and the top score reaches an unbelievable 220 points. He wonders whether Randolph could be Spectre, also called Ghost, the first player to form the NPC caravan known as the Expedition to the Demon Realm, and the only one to approach the true ending. Although that attempt ended in total failure, he remains without question Panginia's greatest player. Since his strongest character would appear after his death, he must have been summoned into Panginia the moment the expedition failed. Even if his looks and equipment were reset, talents from past characters remained with him. That explains it. He understands how such an extraordinary score was reached. Randolph pulls himself back from his thoughts once more. He considers how monsters are appearing in reality, while players are being summoned in the forms of their Pangania characters. The overall situation is starting to make sense. With his final character, he had almost reached the game's ending through the expedition to the Demon Realm. But the mercenary NPCs he hired disrupted his path, and even friendly companions turned against him in ways he never expected. But what if those unexpected obstacles were summoned players, just like him? They may have wanted to stop the ending, or perhaps they saw him as a rival, and that threat could still remain. If the line between reality and Panginia has collapsed, logging out and hiding is no longer an option. To survive safely in this world, he must grow stronger as soon as possible, so he opens the castle door. Isabella asks if he has finished communicating with the stars. The protagonist says yes and explains that he has come to keep his promise to her, making Isabella delighted. Randolph says there is one condition, and the girl asks what he means. Maids promptly leave the room. The protagonist says he wants to head for the sanctuary. Isabella asks if he has lost his mind, while Randolph thinks of his second main quest to gain the class he desires. It is a class that can only be obtained here. He tells her a star is hidden in that place. The system's mission is to acquire a class, with the reward changing based on the class rank. In the middle of a strange structure, Isabella moves through a field of fallen bodies. She wipes her face using a dagger stained with blood. Randolph thinks she dealt with every guard in only a few minutes. As an ally, no one could be more reliable. A few hours before he asks her to guide him to the sanctuary, the events from the previous chapter unfold again, including the lie he told. Isabella asks about the star, and Randolph says it is concealed somewhere inside. To break his curse through the blessing of the stars, he needs that star. He remembers discovering the fourth star by accident while leveling his former character. Isabella shouts that no one may enter the sanctuary. If anyone learns she brought someone secretly, she could lose her life, but the protagonist says she can enter, back in the present. He thinks that if he had failed to convince her, he would already have lost his head. Then he tells her they have arrived. This place is the Holy Land. The system informs him that he has entered the desert sanctuary and gained a secondary quest to explore the desert, though the area is beyond his level. His hidden trait, Giant's Demon Resistance, is shielding him. The protagonist realizes he never could have entered without it. He thinks that sending Isabella ahead and finishing only the secondary quest should still bring strong rewards for a level 2 beginner. But the quest is not the important thing right now, because this is the place he came for. The quest to gain a class in the sanctuary begins, and it will continue until he successfully obtains one. The reward depends on the rank of the class gained, and Randolph believes he can secure the exact class he wants. From the cliff's upper edge, Isabella peers downward with suspicion. After that, her eyes move toward the sanctuary pillars. Then a faint smile appears on her face. She turns around and says they chose the wrong route, but Randolph catches her shoulder and asks where she thinks she is going. She answers that the bridge is a trap, and its chains are made to knock down anyone who attempts to cross. Randolph asks whether she is scared. His words only make Isabella even angrier. He declares that people call her the Snake Princess. Randolph answers that he never realized she was so timid. The girl says it is very likely a trap, and that her leg is cramping. The protagonist simply tells her to climb onto his back. Isabella turns red and yells, asking whether he is trying to get himself killed. Randolph says they cannot waste time. At dawn, once the fallen warriors are discovered, her absence will make her suspicious, so carrying her and running is better than hesitating. Isabella shuts her eyes, furious. Even so, she clings to the protagonist while grumbling about the cursed cramp. Randolph picks up speed and tells her to hold on firmly, and he dashes straight toward the pillars. Isabella shouts, asking where he is going, because that is not the correct way. There is no visible road there, yet Randolph leaps without hesitation. The system triggers his mutant trait, letting him see everything, reveals secrets that ordinary human eyes could never notice. Isabella asks if an invisible road is there, and Randolph says this is the true path. Princess realizes he knows Ara, even she, Faisalmer's second in command, does not. He also seems untouched by the stellar difficulty, making everything even stranger. Randolph glances back and says he never knew the second in command feared heights. Isabella thinks he looks completely at ease before her, and that confidence cannot not come from power alone. It feels as though he is greeting an old friend he has missed for years. Isabella asks whether they have met somewhere before. Randolph says they have never shared the same place, and she asks what he means by that. Randolph explains that it means he has seen her before, but she has never once seen him. All at once, a surge of energy pours through the area. It forms into a plane with a heap of stones at the far end. He understands that a domain barrier covers the whole area, and only those on the assigned path can see what lies ahead. Assuming his memory is right, something within the pile of stones starts glowing red. A moment later, the entire area begins to shake. 3 defender golems rise up before them. They ready themselves to confront him. Randolph thinks the guardians are golems this time, and judging from the rune's size, they are high rank. Fighting them head-on would only end in defeat. He then asks whether Isabella's cramp has passed, and she snaps at him to be quiet and watch. The 3 golems rush toward them at once. One draws back to attack, driving its fist straight at Isabella. The girl only responds with a faint, mocking smile. With a simple lift of her hand, the stone golem's entire arm is cut away. She says she will end this in no time. Then she shoots forward using nearby stones as footholds to launch herself. One golem is taken completely by surprise. Isabella's charge cuts straight through it, splitting it apart. Randolph realizes she is a skilled assassinado, and her strength is absurd even for a character he made himself. One after another, the golems are overwhelmed and torn apart by the girl's power. Randolph thinks to himself that this is what level 8 strength looks like. Just then, a system window appears in front of him. He is offered the Golem Creator class, making Randolph wonder if the system is treating Isabella's abilities as his own. Summoner-type classes are uncommon in Pangea, so Golem Creator is an excellent option. By rank alone, it should be at least high grade. However, it is not the class he is aiming for, so he refuses it. The one capable of giving him the class he truly wants is something entirely different. Isabella is startled by the dark energy spreading through the area. A figure rises from the shadows above them. The ancestral king, ruler of the mountain buried by the nameless star, roars in fury at the intruders. Randolph says it has finally shown itself. It is Dramat, the ancestral king and great god who guards the star. And so both of them freeze in place before the serpent. The system warns that the player's level is far below the recommended level of 10. Randolph feels the overwhelming pressure pressing down on him. This being is the guardian of the sanctuary. Isabella asks if he brought her here to defeat the mountain guardian for him, but Randolph insists that despite its appearance, it is quite gentle. He says it would never attack him, only for the serpent to lunge forward immediately. Its attack is aimed at Isabella. The girl is knocked down to the ground. Randolph is left completely stunned by what happened. Isabella shoots him a furious glare. Randolph mutters that this is odd, because he remembers it as a kind creature that guided people, while the girl asks if that snake looks friendly to him. Dramat orders the challenger of the sanctuary to defeat him and prove her worth, but Isabella argues that she is not the one challenging it. The serpent asks if she did not defeat its sentinels, only to deny her purpose now. Dramat sweeps its tail through the air. It says she will never leave alive if she cannot prove herself, while Isabella dodges and repeats that she is not the challenger. She tells the star bearer to stop standing there and give her instructions, while Randolph realizes he does not remember fighting Dramat during his previous visit. In that instant, a memory rushes into his mind. The ancestral King Dramat is the mountain guardian that protects the star. According to the lore, it is an enchanted beast that grew wise and powerful through the star's energy. He cleared this place before using Wilhelm, a level 10, 5-star character of transcendent rank. When he visited the sanctuary as Wilhelm, Dramat quietly led him to the star, because he had already proven himself qualified. In other words, Dramat attacks anyone it judges as weak. Back then he was powerful, but now he has to figure out what to do. Then, all at once, a thought comes to him. Isabella keeps dodging the beast's relentless attacks. Isabella drops to the ground again. She realizes the sanctuary's poison is disrupting her body and slowing her movements. Following the star bearer into this place was clearly a mistake, but the protagonist tells Dramat to stop. The serpent's tail freezes just above her head. It slowly withdraws and turns its attention toward the protagonist. It demands to know how he knows its true name. Randolph answers that its master, Wilhelm, has returned. Serpent pulls its tail back completely. It asks whether he is truly Wilhelm. Then it suddenly bursts into laughter. It says he is not even ready to receive the star, and is weaker than the sentinels. It tells him to listen carefully. Wilhelm was a mighty human, a flawless transcendental being worthy of becoming its master. However, he failed the expedition to the demon realm, and every one of his stars fell. That means he met his final end, so how dare an inferior being like him speak his master's name? Randolph is struck by the force of the blast. Even so, he tells the serpent to uphold their agreement, leaving Dramat to ask how he could possibly know about that contract. No one was supposed to know know it. Dramat's contract states that whoever gains the star of the mountain buried by the star will learn the mountain guardian's true name and become its new master. The mountain guardian must obey its master's orders, and the contract can never be revealed. Anyone who exposes its contents will lose their life to the curse. He brought it up because he remembered the game's story. Luckily, those rules still hold here. As expected, this is Randolph's body, so the curse has no effect on him. Dramat demands to know his true identity. Randolph says that if he wants the answer, he should guide them forward, because the star itself will prove who he is. Dramat warns that the star shows no pity to those who are unworthy. The moment he approaches it, he will be consumed by flames. Randolph says that may be true, but they will only know once they see it. He asks whether Dramat fears the star will accept him and expose him as its rightful master. Dramat finds the idea amusing. He says Randolph looks like a brat he could crush with one bite, then asks what makes him so confident. He tells Randolph to follow, since he will take him to the star. He does not believe Randolph is Wilhelm, but knowing the contract makes ending him feel wrong. Instead, he prefers to let the star decide his fate. With that, he advances ahead of the two of them. Night begins to settle over the area. Isabella asks if this is the place where the star is kept. Randolph confirms it, saying the object on the altar is the one they came for. The star lies atop a pentagram. Girl asks whether the skull is the star, and Randolph answers that, more precisely, it is Leah's face. When Leah, the twin goddess of Pangenia, lost her life, her body broke into 32 pieces and scattered across the continent. Those fragments are now known as stars. They serve as catalysts that let players break beyond their limits and step into transcendence. The protagonist then directs his attention to the item. A fierce surge of fire bursts up before him. Isabella cries out, asking if he is unharmed. Dramat laughs, saying he already warned him that merely approaching it would burn him. No matter how confident he acted, the star still rejected him. Yet the protagonist remains standing inside the flames. He thinks Dramat really is an irritating creature. This star only takes a player's life under one condition: when they bypass Dramat through a bug. No matter how chaotic it was, he still passed Dramat properly. The real issue is whether he can obtain the class he wants. A star grants a class to players without one, but he discovered that by accident and never tested it himself. So he summons the void before the star. He recites all 12 of his hidden talents. Then the star speaks of him, the one who has finally stood before destruction. His mana changes into stellar energy. He gains the Starpiercer skill along with the star's blessing sub-skill. He also receives the star effect, which adds 5 points to every stat and grows stronger with each star he possesses. Even after transcendence, the star effect will remain. He gains the class known as Successor of the Stars. Randolph steps out with his entire presence transformed, gazes at the palm of his hand, where that energy now rests. Isabella is amazed that he managed to absorb the star. Protagonist's hair continues drifting through the air. He calls to the girl and asks what she plans to do once the curse no longer binds her. She says she wants to leave the desert and search for the Derzian family line. Randolph says he will give her the blessing needed to leave the desert, but only under one condition. She must serve him for 1 year. Once that time passes, he will secure her freedom and help her find the Derzian family line. Isabella recalls the queen from within her memories. Anger tightens her fists. Randolph rests a hand on her shoulder. He tells her he is not the queen, and he does not make false promises. The girl is startled by his words. She bites her lip, then kneels and says she will serve him. Randolph answers that she has chosen wisely. Alias calls to Dramat, asking whether the one who owns the star is now its master. The serpent grows calm and admits that it is true. The protagonist says that if so, then it should bow. The system starts calculating his rewards, stating that he has reached 230 points, and that the Hall of Fame has been updated. Several battle-focused constellations begin watching his actions with interest. Far away, the queen senses a presence that stirs her fury. She notes that Isabella has entered the sanctuary together with the slaves she captured. She orders that both of them be captured at once. Meanwhile, in the ordinary world at the center of a city, a coffee shop remains open at this hour. The twins wonder whether Randolph is truly Spectre, certain that even without counting the first main quest, no one could surpass Gracia's class score unless they knew the game completely. Spectre, the veteran ghost player who spent 5 years in the game, has finally appeared. This will create a major uproar, and they can reach him before anyone else. A girl asks how they plan to do that, since they searched for him for 5 years and still never found him. The twins explain that Spectre was not a real player before, but now he must have a physical form. Since the secret auction opened after the second main quest, they might lure him there. The girl says he will need many items if he wants to rank first in the third main quest. Their plan is to bait him through the secret auction, where players trade items by listing a high-quality item at a low price. Then they can use a twin talisman ability to attach a tracking skill to whoever buys it. New players who do not know the trick often buy cheap auction items, only to be tracked, robbed, and sometimes eliminated. The red-haired one asks whether someone like Spectre would fall for it, since the real Spectre should know every talisman option in the game. Girl trembles as she says no, though she adds that he still might take the bait. She laughs, saying he failed yet still launched the great expedition. Someone that bold is unusual, so if he sees a valuable item, he may buy it anyway. In any case, they must find him and invite him to their guild, while the twins jokingly call the police on her for acting like a stalker. Later, back at the sanctuary, the rankings have shifted, and one person has fallen out of the class acquisition list. Their right to the second quest will be taken away. Assassinetto wonders if he truly has 230 points, and what kind of class could possibly grant that much. It seems he will be unable to use the secret auction for some time, though that hardly matters. With countless fallen figures spread around him, he decides that if he takes down anyone near the top of the rankings, he can rise again. Later, Dramat continues onward with the protagonists. The system announces that the Sanctuary Exploration subquest has been completed. He becomes the first to clear the sanctuary and receives the achievement for doing so. He also receives a teleportation book as his reward. Randolph thinks the journey was not as unpleasant as expected, and by escaping the sanctuary while finishing the exploration, he has solved two problems at once. The system announces that he has gained a level. Randolph finally reaches level 3, though it is far slower than normal because his many talents make him need 10 times the usual experience. Still, his stats rise more in return, so he has no reason to complain. Besides, that is not the urgent matter. The item he receives is a reward from the main quest. For his current level, both items are exceptionally rare. One reward is the Cloak of Shadows. When activated, it makes the wearer invisible, essentially giving him a free stealth skill. Right afterward, something rushes toward them. Dramat immediately senses its presence. He realizes two people are coming in their direction. They close the distance in only a few leaps. Dramat warns that he has detected intruders inside the sanctuary. Isabella says it is probably the Queen's pursuit squad, and the protagonist notes that they have been in the sanctuary for quite a while. The girl asks what he intends to do, since the Queen will not come herself, but the squad is still quite powerful. Even with the Mountain Guardian present, she doubts he can deal with all of them. The protagonist asks why they should fight at all when Dramat is the Guardian. Isabella immediately understands his intention. She leaps away and says they are counting on him. Snake needs to fulfill its duty. Two hurry toward the sanctuary entrance, hearing the bandits' cries behind them, and Isabella asks whether it is really fine to leave. The protagonist reminds her that the Queen is not coming, so it should be fine. The main pursuit squad cannot have arrived yet, meaning this is likely only an advance unit. If they wait until the main force surrounds the sanctuary, escape will be impossible. Since those people are after them anyway, leaving quickly is the better choice. Isabella asks if he is abandoning Dramat because he is useless, but the protagonist says Dramat cannot leave the sanctuary, so only they can escape. He thinks that to leave this place, they must use the portal at the desert's end. Since Isabella's curse was lifted by the blessing of the stars, she can use it safely. But the real issue is something else. The portal requires time before it can activate. Isabella says that once they get past this point, Randolph agrees they will be free after leaving the desert, but reminds her that the portal needs time to activate. Isabella asks how long it will take, and the protagonist answers that it should be about 12 hours. As she can see, the desert offers nowhere useful to hide. Ideally, the pursuit squad will head straight to the sanctuary, and Dramat's delay will buy them time before they notice the escape. During that window, he must communicate with the stars. This place matters, but he also needs to check what is happening in the real world. He asks whether he can trust the girl. In response, she draws her dagger. She declares that she will protect him. Randolph activates the lug-out function and tells her to be careful at the secret auction. The protagonist then opens his eyes in his own bed. He thinks he still has not adjusted to the sensation of returning to his real body. Then he reaches for the phone beside him. He observes that without any alerts or disaster warnings, monsters likely have not appeared yet. The real world and Pangaea are gradually blending together, but many details remain unknown to him. More monsters will appear soon, and the real world players worry him too, since he must return regularly to gather information. A message suddenly arrives on his phone. Kim Seo-yeon asks how Hyung-nim has been doing. In a restaurant, a man on the phone says he already buys her meals and clothes, while Seo-yeon asks why someone who bragged about being rich is now acting cheap. She adds that there is no point in meeting when they have nothing left to discuss. She ends the call, saying she is meeting a friend and telling him not to contact her again. She mutters that he was an irritating fool. Myung may have been pitiful, but at least he always listened to her. Because of that, she thinks she should have kept him around a little longer. Still, she brushes it aside, thinking she would not have left him if he had more money. Just then, Myung calls her name. She says he arrived early and that she expected to wait, but the protagonist asks why she suddenly called him out. Seo-yeon says it may be because they have not met in a while, but he seems slightly different. Myung tells her to speak plainly because he has urgent matters. The girl thinks he is acting strangely confident and says some things never really change. Whenever she called, he always came right away, even today. That was one thing she had always liked about him. After their breakup, she realized how well he had treated her. She kept remembering him and regretting what happened. Myung gives no response. He wonders whether he should order a drink, since she called him here without even buying one. Then he gets up, saying he will leave if she has nothing more to say. Seo-yeon calls for him to wait, saying she misses him and that everything started because of what he said when they broke up. Myung asks whether her new boyfriend knows she is meeting him. He adds that if she plans to flirt with several men, she should delete her Instagram photos, instead of only changing her profile picture. He walks off, but Seo-yeon hurries after him, pleading for him to listen. The protagonist notices how oddly calm he feels. He wonders whether Randolph's growth is also influencing his real body. A man shouts that he was only being kind, yet she is accusing him of stalking her. He demands to know why everyone is staring, while the girl tells the creep to let her go. He pulls out a box cutter and rushes toward her. The girl cries out and squeezes her eyes shut, but Mine catches the man's hand before anything happens. The girl is left speechless by the sight. Protagonist says that this has gone far enough. The man demands to know why he is interfering and orders him to release him. He cries out in pain, yelling that his wrist feels like it is about to snap. Randolph realizes that even without using the broken scale fragment, he could easily crush the man's wrist, proving his real body has changed. So he shoves the man aside and asks the woman if she is unharmed. She says she is safe because of him and has no idea how to thank him. However, the protagonist studies her closely, prompting the girl to ask why he is looking at her like that. Myung thinks she looked familiar for a reason, then realizes she is the woman he saw before. Still, he looks away and says she only resembles someone he knows. The man tries to rush at the protagonist from behind, but Myung avoids him with effortless speed. He reaches toward the man's head and forces him down to the ground. The woman is visibly surprised by what she sees. Meanwhile, the protagonist keeps the creep restrained. Afterward, police officers escort the man to their vehicle. They tell Myung that he will also have to come with them to the station. The woman says he was helping her and that she reported the stalker, but the police insist his actions still count as violence. Myung says he does not have time to deal with this. The police say they cannot ignore the law, but the girl argues that if a witness is dragged into trouble, they must take responsibility. She introduces herself as Kim Hana, a CK Network reporter, and says they should question the actual victim instead of troubling an innocent person. She asks whether they want the case made public, causing the officers to whisper among themselves. People in the crowd remark that she is the famous reporter who saved a child on the day of the incident. Police officer says the victim still needs to accompany them. Hana thanks the protagonist for stepping in to help her. She gives him her card, explaining that she reports on Dimensional Warriors. They are the people who appeared on the same day as the monsters, which is why the public calls them that. Myung wonders if she means the players, thinking people would rather believe in an interdimensional attack than a game becoming reality. Seo-yeon rushes over and asks whether Myung is okay. He grabs his arm and asks if he is hurt, but Hana asks whether she is his girlfriend. Myung steps back, saying she is not, and adds that he does not have a business card. He gives the girl his number, leaving Seo-yeon completely shaken. Hana says Park Myung is a pleasant name. She tells him to message her tomorrow for dinner or coffee, saying it will be her treat, and Myung says he will gladly accept. Seo-yeon asks how he could do something like this to her. He says he is nothing but an ordinary nobody. On the way home, Hana's phone begins to ring. She answers, and the caller asks whether the great Kim is enjoying her weekend. However, the executive director has gone on a trip and left her with an assignment. She has to interview the player Gracia. Hana asks if this is the person who saved America and is now treated like a hero, wondering why such a major figure is being handed to her. But the important point is that Gracia is coming to Korea. Back in the game, fallen bodies cover the area. Isabella gasps for breath, utterly exhausted. Even after defeating 100 assassins, she still manages to remain standing. She staggers slightly on her feet. One mercenary says the queen has ordered her return. If she hands over the slave behind her, they will act as if nothing happened. The girl keeps her dagger ready. In response, the assassins begin moving toward her. Isabella holds her position while calculating every option she has left. Suddenly, energy surges through the area. The teleport activates, and returning to the starting point costs nothing. With his support, Isabella barely manages to stay upright. The protagonist tells her she endured well. Isabella asks whether he has finished communicating with the stars. One mercenary tells the others to stop standing around and deal with the traitor. The protagonist says she kept her promise to protect him, so now it is his turn to keep his. He then releases the power gathered in his hand. He uses Star Piercer, a skill that drains all his energy and lasts for a total of 41 seconds. Those men are brought down with terrifying speed. The protagonist tells her this is the moment she gains her freedom, so she should enjoy it. Isabella says this must be the power of a star bearer. He turns to her and says it is still not too late to return if she wants, because he will not stop her. The girl remains where she is and says no. A smile slowly appears on her face. Because she has chosen to stay beside him, the curse of limits placed on Isabella is nullified, and a connection forms with Arcana, the city on the central continent. The system welcomes them them to the Golden City. He gives a tip, explaining that materialism rules this city, and without noble-level wealth, entering the inner districts is unwise. Merchants chat with ordinary civilians. Other people pass by in elegant carriages. Isabella remarks on its extravagance, and Randolph explains that this is the Golden City, where gold solves everything. First, they need to make money. The girl says he should not worry about gold, since she brought 300 coins with her. Randolph lets out a sigh at that. He says that amount will last one night at best, and the girl is startled. She says that cannot be true, since 300 coins can buy 10 slaves, which is 10 times the price of a cleric. Randolph answers that prices here are not the same as in the Kultzman Desert. Then he wonders why he was even worried, since money is scattered everywhere, and Isabella asks what he means. The protagonist points toward a casino. The girl is surprised by his confidence. Meanwhile, the protagonist stands right in front of it. He tells her to relax because he is extremely lucky. And so, the hidden trait blessing of gold activates. The Golden City of Arcana is also called the City of Pleasures. In Panginia, each minor city is ruled like an independent monarchy, and here, only one law matters. Money alone decides everything. Place where the city's wealth gathers, the Hudson Casino. A security guard politely apologizes to the gentleman. He explains that anyone with a deposit below 10,000 gold cannot enter. Isabella asks why he never mentioned a deposit, since they only have 100 gold left after bathing and buying clothes. But Randolph says they never had real money anyway. The security guard says that without the deposit, they must leave because they are disturbing the other customers. Randolph says he has no gold, but he can provide something as collateral. He reveals the Fairy Queen's tear resting in his hand. The security guard says that, in that case, they are dealing with a VIP guest, and everyone immediately kneels before him. Isabella asks what he handed over, and Randolph says it was a Fairy Queen's tear talisman. It was one of the rewards from their visit to the sanctuary, and its value is at least 1 million gold. He stays calm because it is only a deposit, and once he earns enough money, he can simply buy it back. The roulette wheel starts spinning at high speed. The ball first drops onto a red number. Then it rolls over and settles on a black number. Everyone cheers as he wins again. He began with only 1,250 gold. Yet by now, his winnings have already passed 1.5 million gold. Randolph thinks this is exactly what he expected from the blessing of gold. For earning money, no trade is better. Isabella says they are rich, while the croupier respectfully addresses the gentleman. He says they will pay all his winnings, but he can never enter the Hudson Casino again. Every guest copying his bets keeps winning, and the situation is turning into a serious issue. That is why the security guards have arrived to take control of the matter. The croupier politely asks him to leave the casino. Isabella fixes the guards with a furious glare. However, the protagonist calmly says he will go. Before leaving, he says he must speak with the owner, but the croupier tells him that is impossible. The protagonist tells him not to misunderstand, because he is not the one desperate for that meeting. His boss will be the one who wants to meet him, so the croupier should simply mention Randolph's name. Inside a private room, a man examines the Fairy Queen's tear with his hand of observation. He confirms that it is genuine, then wonders who could possibly own such an item. Only the Fairy Queen's knights carry it, and fairies almost never leave their realm. A fairy knight is strong enough to defeat at least 3 level 10 people. He had searched everywhere for one, but no one was selling. Now, an item like this has arrived at his casino by itself. A subordinate calls out to Mr. Hudson, and says the man who left the talisman as collateral wants to meet him. He says the man is asking for an audience with Hudson. A pleased smile spreads across the casino owner's face. Later, they sit together at a table with tea. Randolph stays expressionless as he looks down at the table. Hudson wonders if this is the man who used the Fairy Queen's tear as collateral. Noticing he does not look powerful, since he heard the man wanted to speak with him, Hudson asks what he meant. Randolph says that was the whole point. He knew Hudson would want to meet, so he sent the message through. What he needs is the talisman he placed as collateral. Hudson says Randolph must know he collects rare talismans, and he was just about to call him to discuss buying it. The protagonist says he will not reject a fair offer, and Hudson replies that this is excellent before moving on to the price. He offers 2 million gold in total, considering it a generous amount. Isabella reacts in complete disbelief. The protagonist calmly says he wants 20 million. Hudson says that amount could buy a mansion in downtown Arcana, and even a rare talisman is only useful for reforging weapons. Even for him, paying that much for a mere collector's item is impossible. Randolph answers that this is only true if it is merely a hobby item. To him, the Fairy Queen's tear is not just a talisman. It is something he needs in order to enter the city council. The minimum requirement for joining the council is reaching level 10, but but it must be achieved through personal strength. For a non-combatant like him, that is impossible. That is why he needs the fairies tier. With it, he can use high-level equipment to make up for his weak combat attributes. And the reason a merchant who only owns a casino wants council status is to gain recognition from his fiancée Serengeti's family. Randolph recalls the past along with that name. She was the only daughter of Marcus Weiser from the Balrang Kingdom. Known as the White Knight, she commanded 500 knights during the expedition to the Demon Kingdom. She lost both legs while protecting him from the Demon King, and she had been his most trusted aide. At the time, he saw her actions as nothing more than a dramatic event, because before arriving here, Pangania had only been a game. After Wilhelm entered this world and realized NPCs could also be players, he remembers Serengeti's words, telling him that if she did not return from the expedition, he had to deliver this for her. Serengeti's necklace has been obtained. The protagonist wonders what that item is. The precious necklace holds an image of Serengeti and another of her fiancé Hudson. The protagonist wonders whether this was part of the original storyline. In truth, she never had a fiancé at all. Someone had tampered with the character preset, and the reason the game accepted it so smoothly was because Hudson was a player like him, someone who had assimilated into this world. Hudson then says he never told anyone, and asks how Randolph discovered it. Randolph thinks Hudson must have entered this world far earlier than he did, so he needs to draw out as much information as possible about this place and other players. So he lifts his hand and says he did not discover it himself. He heard it. The stars told him. Hudson asks if he is claiming to be a stellar bearer. Randolph says he does not expect belief, but he can offer anything Hudson wants, not only money. In exchange, Hudson only has to accept one simple condition. Hudson asks what it is, and the protagonist tells him to recount his life story to the stars. After hearing it, he will decide whether to help. However, he must speak only the truth, because the stars favor nothing but honesty. Hudson grips his leg and questions why Randolph wants to hear his life story. Randolph knows this is not an easy choice. Stellar bearers are rarely found among NPCs, and revealing personal details could put Hudson at risk. Hunters are NPCs who specialize in tracking players. They label them criminals and deal with them on sight. Countless players have fallen because their infiltration methods vary so widely that only extreme caution works. That is also why Randolph refuses to expose himself. Even so, he is sure Hudson will accept, because Serengeti is not just some ordinary NPC to him. The man fixes his gaze on the photo of his fiancée. He finally says it is fine and agrees to tell his story. He says he will begin with Serengeti, since most of what he wants is connected to her. She was a courageous knight who joined the expedition to the Demon Realm, led by the 8 heroes. The protagonist asks what he means since Wilhelm led the expedition. Hudson confirms Wilhelm was the most famous, but all 8 heroes carried it out together. Conflicts broke out among them, and those internal disputes eventually caused the expedition to fail. Randolph asks if he knows who the 8 heroes were, and Hudson says he does, since they are legendary figures. Among them, the strongest after Wilhelm was Gracia. News reports question the identity of the man riding a monster, with Kim Hannah covering the story. His secretary tells him she has arranged Gracia's interview with reporter Hannah, and he thanks her. His secretary asks whether he truly needs to go to Korea, since the government wants him to remain in the US in case of attacks. Gracia says no, he absolutely has to go, because he has a feeling that this man could be the friend he has been searching for. Randolph sits at the table, listening closely to the story. Back in Seoul, Korea, Randolph eats while feeling slightly sick. Hannah asks if he dislikes the meat, and he says something happened yesterday, so he is simply tired. He thinks about how Hudson cried through the night, but he still obtained information about the heroes, which forced him to stay in the game until morning. Randolph asks if this place is expensive, saying he is not sure it is right for him to eat for free. Hannah answers that he dealt with her stalker last time, and honestly, this meal is nowhere near enough repayment. Then something suddenly draws her attention. She asks if the woman behind them is not the same one who was with him before, adding that she keeps glancing over. Randolph thinks the coincidence is almost unbelievable, and the man with her looks like someone from Kim Seo-yeon's social media. He wonders whether his name is Jinwoo. Hannah says they can move to another table if he feels uncomfortable. Randolph says it is all right and tells her not to worry, since he and that woman truly have no relationship anymore. But then a voice calls out to Park Myung. The person demands to know why he followed Seo-yeon here. He says Randolph kept bothering her after their breakup, and now he has even followed her around. Randolph asks about that, and Jinwoo says it is true. He claims he heard Randolph cried and begged Seo-yeon to go to a coffee shop with him last time, leaving Randolph confused. Then he realizes what actually happened. He looks toward Seo Yan, who is smiling. Jinwoo warns that if he keeps following Seo Yan, he will make him pay for it. Hana snaps that she stayed quiet, but the more she hears, the more absurd it becomes. Jinwoo asks if she is one of his rented girlfriends. Everyone begins watching the argument as Jinwoo insults the girl and Hana speaks up for herself. Then Jinwoo throws money at her face, asking if it is still not enough. He asks why two lowly people like them do not go somewhere else. Hana slaps him across the face. She calls him a rotten jerk. Jinwoo says she struck him first. He tells her to watch herself and prepares to hit back. His strike closes in on the girl, but he suddenly trips and falls to the floor. The protagonist says that is enough, adding that Jinwoo does not look very innocent either. Jinwoo turns toward him with clear irritation. Randolph's hand is already pressed against his face. He drives Jinwoo's head down against the floor and repeats that enough is enough. Jinwoo struggles to understand what is happening and why this man is so powerful. Seo Yeon shouts that he is humiliating her and tells him to stand up. Randolph suggests they stop the conversation right there. He says Jinwoo started the trouble and should make things easier for everyone, while Jinwoo feels his pride being crushed. However, Jinwoo realizes he chose the wrong opponent and pulls a scale from his pocket. The scale suddenly begins to shine. Its light fills the entire room, catching the protagonist off guard. Randolph asks what that glow is supposed to be. The surrounding people are just as startled. They shout that he is a dimensional warrior and that he really transformed. Jinwoo then throws him down and tells him to keep talking now. Protagonist lands heavily on his back. Hana cries out the protagonist's name. Randolph thinks he never expected Jinwoo to be a player. Still, he wonders why he feels so calm. He clearly saw the transformation, yet the attack barely hurt. His Great Sage trait activates. Jinwoo says he only dropped his guard for a moment, and Randolph dared to make him look ridiculous. Randolph judges that he has only one class, and is merely level 4, and in Pangenia, every level demands far more experience. On top of that, players with more talents need even more experience, making them stronger but slower to level up. Naturally, Jung Jinwoo has very little talent, and the reason for his low level is obvious. He has never truly fought. From the first day until now, he has only survived by running. Thanks to several lucky moments, he survived the main quest, and somehow obtained what could be called a decent class. As a reward for reaching a high rank, he also gained the ability to log out. Randolph can tell without even checking. Not everyone begins with abilities like his. Seo Yeon says that is enough and urges them to leave, because people are watching, but Jinwoo says he is no longer in the mood. He turns to Randolph and says he only survived because of Seo Yeon, warning him never to approach her again. The protagonist thinks Jinwoo is openly revealing himself as a player and wasting the Golden Scale's power like it means nothing. Hana asks if he is hurt, and the protagonist says he is fine. He tells her to forget it, since they were the ones who struck first. It was nothing serious, so they should just finish eating. Then a strange sensation spreads through his body. A sudden earthquake shakes the area, startling everyone nearby. The protagonist thinks this cannot be happening. The walls around him begin to crack and break apart. The collapse is beginning again, and monsters are about to emerge. Hana says they have to run, but Randolph covers her mouth and tells her to wait a little. Everyone runs in panic as monsters spread through the area and attack wildly. However, they are not actually trying to bite anyone. Randolph thinks they are fortunate that putrid worms appeared, since they only feed on nearby bodies. As long as no one attacks them, something worse will not show up. Even so, several of them gather around Jinwoo and Seo Yeon. She screams at her boyfriend and tells him to do something. He raises his spear, while Randolph shouts for him not to attack, but it is already too late for that fool to stop. Jinwoo wonders how he managed to defeat one with a single strike. He realizes he is stronger than expected and shouts that he will take care of all these cursed monsters. Everyone cries out that this is what a dimensional warrior can do and urges people to escape that way. Jinwoo thinks he is not scared at all, and that these creatures are nothing to him. Randolph tells Hana to get as far away as she can. She needs to stay far from that idiot who is fighting. The farther away, the better. Jinwoo wonders where the sudden miss came from as his sight becomes blocked. Without warning, a hand reaches toward him. A moment later, it covers his eyes. An observer is lurking behind him. It wants to know who did it. Who was responsible for taking its children from it? An elite monster, the putrid Maba, appears. The recommended party is 20 level 6 players. The monster commands him to get rid of them all. In that instant, Jinwoo falls under the creature's control. One of the men lying on the ground coughs and wonders what just happened. He cannot make out anything through the fog, but Jinwoo is already right behind him. Then he raises the spear and aims it straight at him. He drives the spear forward, telling the man to go to hell. Under the putrid worm blood's influence, the man appears to him like a monster. As the spear rushes toward him, the man can only wonder what is going on. A splash of blood scatters across the ground. However, Randolph steps in and stops the strike by cutting off his arm. Jinwoo turns his gaze to the side, grips gripped by panic. Randolph says he never meant to interfere, but Jinwoo has clearly crossed the line. He commands him to step forward and face him at once. The putrid worms start writhing once again. Laughing all the while, they wrap Jinwoo inside a cocoon. The creature tears its way out, screaming that this feels rather satisfying. The putrid mamba remarks that there is a human nearby who looks appetizing. The protagonist only fixes his eyes on the creature in silence. Somewhere else, Hana cries out for Myung, asking where he has gone. Fog ahead hides everything from her sight. She calls his name one final time. Randolph rushes at the creature, smashing through everything in his way. He avoids each strike, realizing the fog allowed his transformation to stay hidden, but it does not mean the fight will be easy. Without knowing the creature's attack patterns, he would have already been ripped apart. Mamba finds it odd, since his physical stats are nothing special, yet he keeps avoiding every attack. He moves as though he already understands each strike before it comes. Randolph shifts his sword into a direct thrust, yet the monster declares that the attempt is pointless. Randolph still cuts through every one of its tentacles. He predicts that the putrid mamba's next move will come the moment he turns. A burst of blood erupts right in front of him. Randolph quickly seizes a nearby table. He uses it as a shield against the blast, knowing that contact would place a debuff on him. The table catches every drop of the blood. The protagonist shatters it completely right after. Then he continues forward, breathing hard. Mamba says it never expected him to avoid even that attack. His evasion ability is truly remarkable. Still, if his attacks cannot reach the creature, then dodging alone will not change the outcome. Randolph tells the creature to calm down. He says he will soon drive a sword through its forehead, then summons the talisman of the Fairy Queen's tear. He equips the boots of Hermes. Though he lacks the required level, the tear lets him use them. He also puts on Myla's armor and helmet. Now he can activate the Michela set skill, Celestial Dragonoid, along with the speed from the boots of Hermes. The protagonist feels lucky he bought it at the secret auction, though he hesitates because the tear should only be used in true emergencies. The boots of Hermes mimic a god's steps, allowing their wearer to move with the speed of the wind. Randolph dashes ahead, thinking he will still keep the promise he made. With a single stride, he closes the distance and stands before the monster. One of its tentacles lashes toward his face. The protagonist slips past it with ease. The ground sinks under the force of his step. Even so, Randolph presses forward without slowing down. He moves so quickly that a trail is left behind him. The monster is startled when he suddenly appears at its back. It spins around and curses the protagonist. Then it launches the spines from its back. Randolph knocks them aside with effortless precision. He then brings his sword into motion. From behind his helmet, he fixes the monster with an icy stare. This time, the creature's tail suddenly shifts. It lashes out, forcing Randolph to pull back. The impact makes him cough up a little blood. Even so, he keeps guarding himself with his arms. The system triggers the power of Michela's set. It transforms him into a celestial dragonkin. The monster says he still has a few tricks left, while blood gathers inside its mouth. Fires at the protagonist, snarling at him like a cursed rat. Randolph realizes this is the putrid mamba's final attack pattern, and if he can endure it just once. The blood rushes closer to his boots. The mamba declares that he has no chance of surviving this. It says that Rat should fall inside its bloody cyclone. From within the storm, power starts to gather. The protagonist releases the effect of his clothing, creating a powerful gust. The mamba realizes he is using wine to scatter its poisonous mist. Putrid mamba has 4 attack patterns, and after using them all, it becomes briefly confused, unable to move. But once that state ends, its next cycle grows stronger. Randolph steps forward, saying that means this is his only opening to win. The putrid mamba tells him to wait for a moment, but before it can finish, the blow reaches its head. Randolph plunges the sword into it, saying he already warned it. In the end, he said he would drive a sword into its forehead. The system congratulates him for defeating the black mamba alone. Because of this, his golden scale now has nearly 43 hours remaining. Everyone cries out that the mist is finally clearing. The darkness briefly pulls back, and the protagonist gains a lucky die as his synchronization reaches 9.1%. Hannah wonders if it is really over, and what exactly just happened. Through the mist, she spots Randolph wearing a hood. He quickly hides his face right afterward. Girl realizes he is the same man from before. She speaks up, saying he saved her last time and surely remembers her. Myung thinks she is safe now as the cloak's effect takes hold. Hannah asks to talk with him for just a moment, but the protagonist disappears. This leaves her completely startled. She notices the ruined remains scattered across the ground. Then, all of a sudden, the protagonist comes closer. He calls Hannah's name and she turns toward him. The protagonist says he finally found her, explaining that they were separated in all the chaos. He asks whether she is injured, but Hannah says she is all right. She senses that something about the protagonist feels different. His finger is bleeding and says he never imagined things would turn out this way. Hannah asks if he has been hurt. Protagonist says some monster blood must have splashed on him, thinking he did not even notice. The girl points out that his clothes look clean, but his nails are covered with blood. She recalls how calm he was when the monsters appeared and suspects he must have known what they were. The protagonist has no idea how to respond. Still, he says everything became so chaotic that he simply blurted out whatever came to mind. Hannah thinks there is something very suspicious about him. He acts as though nothing happened, then appears right after the man who saved her vanishes. The following day comes. News reports that only a few days after the first invasion, another incident has been reported. Some warriors warn that these attacks may keep occurring and say a long-term operation with the government is needed. As a result, countless civilians shoot themselves inside their homes, leaving the streets nearly deserted. In response, citizens voice anger toward the government, believing its actions may have contributed to the many victims in the second incident. Government officials sit around a table and watch. A bald man remarks that they were careless before, yet now they are creating this entire mess. Another man answers that back then, people who were not directly affected could not grasp how serious it was. A woman says it may have been beyond ordinary understanding, so the government likely tried to keep things calm at first. At last, their leader says this incident must have made everyone realize another invasion can happen, and that makes this the ideal moment to announce the rise of their alliance. Tawu adds that other alliances are probably thinking the same thing, so they must quickly recruit talent, while the woman says they are reviewing the videos. The footage comes from CCTV, so the image is unclear, but if he defeated the putrid Mamba alone, this man must be Randolph, the first-place player. Another person notes that Randolph supposedly just cleared Mission 2, meaning he should only be level 4 or 5 and unable to use those boots. He may have used a talisman, and that makes him someone they need to secure. This man appeared right after the Spectre vanished, and while they are not certain, the two might be the same person. They cannot rely on the other player alliances, so they need to bring him over to help stop the rift. Back inside the game, Hudson is left stunned. He asks if Randolph is really saying it, that he used the tear of the Fairy Queen. Randolph confirms it, and Hudson asks why he would do that, if he was supposed to give the tear to him. Randolph answers that he promised to help, but never promised to hand over the tear. He says he does not need a talisman to reach his goal and only destroyed it so Hudson would stop clinging to false hope, though he cannot admit he needed it. Hudson asks if that means there is another method, and the protagonist remarks that his expression clearly shows he does not believe him. Still, he tells Hudson to follow him, saying he will give him a reason to trust. They soon arrive at a different location, Arcana's underground dungeon, the sewers. They continue moving deeper through the area. Hudson asks why it had to be the sewers of all places. Randolph says it is to erase Hudson's doubts, and also because he wants to create an anchor point before going to the place that can grant his wish. Teleportation book he received from Dramat is useful, but raising the exploration rate every time has become troublesome. He wanted to explore all of Arcana, but with limited time, they will have to settle for clearing the sewer dungeon. Hudson shouts that entering this place with only 3 people is far too dangerous. The boss living here is a mutant monster rat, and defeating it normally requires at least 6 level 8 fighters. Randolph suddenly stops walking. He calmly says that he already knows. The dungeon boss appears and begins moving toward them. The rat's crimson eyes fix sharply on its target, then it digs its claws into the ground. In the next instant, it lunges forward at terrifying speed. Randolph keeps staring straight ahead without saying a word. Hudson thinks the mutant monster rat uses its speed as its main weapon, and normally 6 people would handle it in formation, yet they are completely exposed. He cannot understand what Randolph was thinking by doing something so reckless. Randolph tells Isabella to move, and she immediately draws her dagger. She shifts toward the 10 o'clock position. The rat fails to understand what is happening. Randolph thinks that once its pattern is known, its speed is no longer a threat. Of course, this only works because Isabella is highly skilled in combat, and her level is far beyond that of ordinary characters. Hudson breaks into a cold sweat. Then the protagonist calls out to him. He says he will keep his promise no matter what it costs, so Hudson should stop doubting him. If he says something can be done, then it can be done. Hudson is left speechless by those words. The secretary tells Mr. Jang that he checked all nearby CCTV footage but found no trace, and Jang says no one knows anything. The whole situation feels like a horror story. The secretary asks if they should meet Mr. Jinwoo again, but Jang refuses, saying the man has completely lost his mind. He is still in shock after losing both arms, and returning to him would only waste their time. Jinwoo sits staring at the wall, frozen in complete shock. The secretary mentions Kim Hana, since she seemed to know something, and Jang asks if he is suggesting they storm a broadcast station. Besides, Gracia is protecting Kim Hana, and that alone is causing a major uproar among Korean players. They have heard that Person is holding a face-to-face interview with Hana. The two sit facing each other beneath the spotlight. Gracia introduces himself to her. Hana says it is an honor to meet him. The secretary asks if it was love at first sight, and Jang warns him not to stir up trouble for no reason. He thinks that with the Spectre gone, Gracia is now the strongest player. If such a monster came to Korea just for a reporter interview, staying away is the wisest choice. They provoke him, the alliance itself could be ruined. Somewhere else, a man asks whether it is over yet. The victim asks what he is doing, since real-world PK is supposed to be forbidden. Gracia told them to prepare for an invasion, so such actions are banned in the real world. But the man grabs his face and tells him that it is fine. He ends the young man's life and tells him to ask Gracia for help. Dark stain spreads across the floor. Meanwhile, Murder calmly leaves the scene behind. The ranking updates, and he becomes a ranker with access to the secret auction. Murder is convinced Randolph must be Spectre, otherwise there is no way to explain that score. If it really is him, he will challenge the main quest without delay, and by waiting there, Murder should meet him soon. And when that happens, Randolph will fall by his hand. In Pangenia, a Hydreigon drives its claw into the ground. It stands there with an overwhelming presence. Smoke soon wraps around two people. Randolph thinks he was fortunate, since his main goal was simply to create an anchor point inside the sewer dungeon. The defeated monster lies motionless on the ground. He steps closer and pulls a crystal out from within it. It is a mutant rat core, a material that can mutate beasts or be used to craft tools. He never expected to obtain a material that could evolve the Hydreigon. He asks whether Hudson handled matters at the casino, and Hudson confirms everything is settled. Giving up the casino is regrettable, but there is no choice if they will be gone for a long time. For Serengety's sake, it is not worth hesitating. Besides, the people there would never leave the casino alone without him, so he chose to trust the Starbearer and follow him. More than anything, Isabella defeating the rat alone was impressive. Still, it happened because of Randolph, a man who seems to see through everything. Hudson is certain Randolph is no ordinary man, and if he lets this chance pass, another opportunity may never come. A smile appears on Randolph's face as he asks if that is truly how Hudson feels. He thinks he made the right choice, and no longer needs to worry about money, so he can focus entirely on reaching level 10 as they move on. Hudson asks where they are headed, saying he does not remember being told. They are going to the masterpiece that can grant his wish. He thinks of the masterpiece that will fulfill Hudson's desire, and of the place where the third quest begins, the Tower of Spirits. In the middle of a vast forest, the protagonist and his companions begin searching the area. Hudson says that to his untrained eyes, it looks like an ordinary forest. Randolph rejects that idea at once. He explains that this is the entrance to the Tower of Spirits, the Basrock forest where the spirit tree grows. The spirit tree is the birthplace of spirits, and it opens the route to their realm. The only way to reach the Tower of Spirits is to enter that path at dusk. However, he places his hand against the tree. He realizes it has been dead for a very long time. It is not only the tree. The whole forest is lifeless, and no new spirit has been born here for ages. It is not the best approach, but he has no other choice, so he draws his sword. Hudson asks what he is planning to do. The protagonist then steadies his hand. He spins forward and moves toward the tree. The other two members of his group are startled by his action. Then the tree is split in two. A violent gust of wind surges through the forest. Hudson asks whether it is really fine to cut the tree like that, but a brilliant light rises high above them. The protagonist then moves his hand. He launches a projectile toward the light. Isabella pulls out her dagger. She shields Hudson from an incoming attack. Her hand is hurt in the process. A man says he did not expect her to block it, adding that this is rather interesting. The level 9 High Dryad refers to her as a human woman. Hudson says there is no way that creature is truly a High Dryad. The Dryad says he thought they were merely lost travelers and had planned to show mercy by letting them pass. They dared to cut down the spirit tree. It seems humans have forgotten how to fear them. Isabella reports that there are at least 50 of them. If they all attack together, they have no chance. In the worst case, she must make sure the Starbearer escapes. Randolph tells him not to blame someone else when he was the one who cut the tree. If he had not done it, they would never have appeared, and the Dryad calls him insane. Randolph tells him to come down because he wants to talk, but the Dryad refuses and shoots an arrow at him. Protagonist asks whether he truly plans to stay there doing nothing while the forest withers away. The Dryad is left utterly taken aback. Protagonist declares that he will restore life to this forest. He sees no spirit capable of reviving it, and he knows better than anyone that without new spirits, the forest is doomed. He says the gate to the spirit tower must be opened so he can give the forest a spirit, but the Dryad dismisses it as nonsense, saying the tower is reserved only for the chosen. He then asks if Randolph truly believes someone like him could enter that place. Randolph knows entering the tower is nearly impossible, since it requires the right talent and the completion of certain missions. Only when several rare conditions align can someone beat the low odds and enter, and with Randolph's current level, it is far beyond his reach. But that would only apply if he were an ordinary character, so he tells the Dryad to be quiet and open the gate. The Dryad asks whether he is seriously claiming he can save the forest. He calls him a liar and says they must punish him for destroying the tree. He gets ready to fight, leaving Hudson and Isabella startled. The High Druid says nothing at first, and he lifts one hand hand and tells them that is enough. The other druids are all shocked by his choice. The high druid then leaps down to the ground. He steps directly before Randolph and tells him to honor his words. The protagonist replies that he always keeps his promises and will return the spirits to the forest. The high druid says he does not expect success, but believes it will not be too late to deal with him if he fails. He then orders them to follow him to the tower. After the day passes, they finally reach a tower made of stone. The stones piled together show no sign of movement. The druid explains that the life force is draining away, and the only way to open the path to the tower is by using the remains of an idle spirit. He warns Randolph that failure will make him fertilizer at once, and Randolph asks what he will receive if he succeeds. The druid answers that a proper reward will be given for such an accomplishment. A side quest begins, requiring him to bring the spirits back to the forest. The druid tells him to start preparing himself immediately. He is about to open the portal. A brilliant light spreads across the area and swallows the entire party. Hudson raises a hand to cover his face. Even so, he forces his eyes to stay open. The system announces that entry has been granted only to those with permission, and with that, they all find themselves standing inside this space. Hudson asks where they have ended up. He wonders if this is the Spirit Tower, but Randolph says no, explaining that they are inside the portal and can only enter the tower after receiving permission. Hudson asks whose permission they need, but then he spots something ahead. He sees a spirit standing before them. Hudson asks if he should catch it because it looks rather cute, but Randolph tells him not to. Then he notices something unusual about the spirit. The spirit remains silent while examining him. Then it says it can sense a druid's aura and must grant him permission to climb the tower. It asks whether these companions are people he can trust with both his life and his back. It will allow them to enter the tower alongside him. However, the path will appear only after each of them passes through the tower's gates. Isabella says she will return shortly. Hudson says his body is beginning to vanish. The spirit explains that time flows differently inside the tower than in the real world, so they may climb without concern. Then it wishes him good fortune. The third main mission begins, ordering him to climb the tower. The hint says he should first use the Tower of Challenges found in every city. Randolph finds himself standing before a massive black portal. He thinks it has been quite a long time. Still, he wonders what sort of gate this could be. To enter the Spirit Tower, each person must pass a gate tied to their elemental affinity. Isabella, for instance, has wind affinity and must face a wind trial. Hudson, whose affinity is water, receives the water gate. Each gate creates the challenge best suited to its climber, but Randolph has never seen this attribute before and wonders if it comes from having every affinity. Suddenly, the gate opens its eyes. It says a being with affinity for all elements truly exists, even possessing powers that should not be able to coexist. Perhaps this is due to the void element that embraces all others, yet there is clearly something beyond that. This is genuine chaos, and the gate he must overcome is called the Gate of Chaos. It warns the traveler to proceed with caution. If chaos consumes him, he will never make it back. Inside a neat room, the protagonist studies everything laid out before him. For 5 years, he had played almost every day without growing tired of it. It was fair to say no one played Pangania more than he did. He knew more of this world's secrets than anyone, yet countless mysteries still remained beyond him. It was a game of absurd difficulty, almost impossible to clear, yet it always sparked a fierce desire to challenge it. Its mysteries were deeply woven into the world, and that was exactly why he loved the game. He wonders whether this gate has ever been opened before. He draws his sword, determined to become the first one to complete it. A white-haired figure stands in front of him. It turns its head only slightly, and reveals that it is Wilhelm. The protagonist wonders why the character he created has appeared before him as a trial. Wilhelm's blade closes in on his neck, but the protagonist barely manages to avoid it. He thinks that whatever the reason may be, he now has no choice but to fight this man, the one who once held the top position. As he tries to attack, the protagonist's sword is knocked from his hand. He realizes this challenge was made to be impossible. Wilhelm readies himself for a counterstrike. He brings the protagonist down, making him think this game is truly insane. His sword drives into the floor. Randolph survives by activating Mikula's armor just in time. He thinks the blade failed to cut cleanly through his arm, meaning its attack power is roughly equal to his defense. It looks like Wilhelm, but its stats seem close to Randolph's, if it has only copied his appearance. Then there is no reason to fear it, so the protagonist activates Gale. Wilhelm is thrown hard into the nearest wall. He rises again, showing no visible signs of injury, yet his gaze remains cold and fixed ahead. He watches Randolph rush in with his sword ready to pierce. Wilhelm begins moving forward. He avoids the thrust and lands a kick at the same time. Randolph's head is knocked sharply to the side. Wilhelm asks if he has come to take back his former glory. Randolph is caught off guard by those words. Wilhelm advances with his sword and asks whether such a thing is even possible. The protagonist moves his hand. He grabs Wilhelm's hair and demands to know what nonsense he is talking about. Then he forces his head to move with his own strength, and with his sword, he separates the head from the body. Wilhelm collapses lifelessly right after. His head rolls along the floor. The protagonist takes out a health potion. His injuries heal quickly. Another drop slips from his mouth. He says it is fortunate he bought potions with the money from Hudson Casino, but then several copies of Wilhelm begin forming around him. The protagonist says he would have deeply regretted it if he had not brought those potions. Meanwhile, in the real world, inside a building, Hannah announces that the interview will end there. She says it must have been exhausting for him to come all this way. Then she thanks Mr. Gracia for giving his time. He says it is fine, but now that the interview is over and the cameras are off, he has a personal question. Hannah asks what it is, and Gracia says it is nothing complicated. It concerns the man mentioned in the article she wrote. He wants her to tell him everything she knows about that man, including every detail of what she saw. Back in the game world, multiple Wilhelms lie scattered across the floor. Randolph is still standing, with Gale active around him. He holds his ground with sword in hand, though his breathing has grown heavy. He wonders how long it has been, after fighting at least 100 of them. Fortunately, no more are being summoned, and since nothing is visible above, this is likely the final floor. Potions are gone, so he hopes a clear message will appear soon. One of Wilhelm's bodies begins fading from the floor. Randolph is instantly taken aback by the sight. The shadows spread across the floor and form a smile. It asks whether Chaos has failed, then says it has grown fond of him, never expecting him to reach this point. Randolph addresses the spirit of Chaos, saying its appearance must mean he has cleared the tower. The spirit shapes another smile and questions his assumption. It breaks into wild laughter. It says this is absurd, as it almost believes someone like him could truly clear the tower. The real challenge has not even started yet. Past that barrier is where the true trial begins. He is already worn out after only reaching this point, and it asks whether he honestly thinks he can finish. This place was never designed as a trial that could actually be cleared. Beyond this point, hundreds or even thousands of the illusions he fought are waiting. He should simply give up, because clearing the tower is impossible. Yet even the spirit is caught off guard. Randolph walks forward without hesitation, and the spirits begin pleading for contracts. They say he will gain tens of thousands of advantages that way. The Tower of Spirits grants rewards according to the trial entered. Clearing the fire trial gives a fire spirit. Wind trial grants a spirit of the same element, and once it hatches, a contract can be formed. Since he entered the Chaos trial, he believed the clear reward would be a Chaos Spirit Egg. Spirit eggs are rare, and this would be the first ever, making it a top-tier reward. Yet they want a contract before he even finishes. If that is true, then something even greater than the Chaos Egg must be waiting beyond this door. With that thought, he steps inside. He says they already told him more of the enemies he fought are waiting on the other side. It will surely be difficult after using every potion in battle, but he has memorized their patterns until he is sick of them. At this point, he no longer needs potions or anything similar. He will dodge the patterns he has learned countless times, and by doing that, he will clear the tower. The spirit is baffled, saying it never expected him to challenge the tower for such a ridiculous reason. He truly is the kind of fool they cannot help but like. Back at the tower's entrance portal, the protagonist wonders where he is now. The system completes the main quest and begins calculating the results. The spirit says he really did succeed in climbing the tower. Then it offers him its most sincere congratulations. His companions are still alive as well. The protagonist asks if all that talk about the real challenge was a lie, and the spirit admits it. If he had made a contract, he would have been trapped forever. The protagonist sheathes his sword and says they are skilled liars, while the spirit replies that lying has always been their pleasure. Still, he must have received a hint when he cleared the challenge, and that was what mattered. In any case, the spirit tells him to accept his well-earned reward and hold out his hand. The protagonist has cleared the Tower of Chaos, and will now receive the achievement rewards. Randolph thinks that if there is no hidden twist, the reward should be a Chaos Spirit Egg. He obtains the egg, and immediately begins interfering with everything around it. Even the protagonist himself is surprised by it. That mass of darkness contains a hidden celestial trait. Feathers then begin wrapping around the egg. Because of this, the system text becomes distorted, changing to say he has obtained a celestial spirit egg. Randolph looks down in astonishment. He wonders what exactly just happened. The unknown egg is said to have fallen from the celestial realm and rests at the end of darkness, light, and chaos. Randolph thinks celestial must refer to the celestial race living in the celestial realm, and this egg proves he is connected to them. He wonders if it relates to his hidden trait, meaning it may be more than a similar name, and could be a true characteristic. He asks whether the spirit knows anything, but it denies knowing. Even so, the spirit kings are showing interest. The spirit kings are among the strongest beings in existence and serve as key mediators of Pangenia. If they are interested, the egg must be incredibly valuable. He wants to know what kind of egg it is, but there is no way to confirm it now. He will have to hatch it later to learn the truth. The system declares it an unmatched achievement never accomplished before, and his score reaches 240 points. Because the constellations are excited, his rewards are strengthened several times over. The protagonist realizes they must be the ones connected to the time of the 100 stars. Several constellations also begin showing curiosity toward the sanctuary of Dramat, yet it is surprising that 5 such powerful beings have taken notice. These beings hold major roles in Pangea, so earning their favor is always useful since they offer special quests and increase rewards. According to the game's lore, they enjoy human stories, so he assumes they were pleased by the chaos challenge he revealed. Thanks to the constellations, the quality of his rewards rises beyond the usual level. From the 20 options listed below, he may select 2 rewards. Little later, Isabella and Hudson finish clearing the tower and come out. Isabella is given a wind spirit egg, while Hudson receives one belonging to water. Since the number of spirit eggs is chosen at random, Isabella is lucky enough to receive 2 and chooses to keep her promise to the Dryads. If the wind spirit hatches one day and is released into the forest, Azrak Forest may finally be able to recover. As thanks, they also present their finest elixir, the mandrake, made from a 1,000-year-old herb filled with the forest's vitality. Naturally, they hand it to Isabella, making her even more powerful. The quest is completed. He gains the title Friend of the Dryads, a forest meeting point, first place in the tower climbing rankings, the Guardian Wall privilege, and an upgraded grade. Using the cart Hydrogen, the group sets off again. Randolph faces the Guardian Wall, which protects his disconnected body from danger, and a notification appears. The protagonist thinks this is an enormous relief. When he enters Pangea, it shields Park Mayung in reality, and when he returns, it protects Randolph instead. With 72 hours remaining for the broken fragment of the Golden Scale, he knows extra time will only help with what comes next. Hudson calls out to the Starbearer. He thanks him, saying he never imagined he would receive a spirit egg and wants to hatch it quickly, since it should solve his problem. Randolph says advancing from level 9 to 10 is difficult alone, but with a spirit's power, it should be possible. He suggests visiting one place first, and Hudson agrees, saying he will always follow him. Randolph thanks him in return. They soon arrive in another city. Hudson says the one thing he needed was actually in this cursed place, and he lets out a frantic scream. Isabella looks confused, while Randolph tells him to quiet down. The girl asks what kind of place could make him react like this, and the protagonist says it is the territory of Marquis Weiser. This is where Hudson's fiancée lives. Hudson asks why they came when he is not yet worthy of asking for Serengeti's hand, but Randolph says he is not making him do it today. They came because he has something he needs to ask Serengeti directly. They move along, shattered windows come into view. One alley is crowded with beggars. On the opposite side, people are gathered in prayer. They pray before a large stone monument standing at the center. Isabella says the scene feels like the middle of a funeral. She asks if he recognizes any of the names, but Randolph says he does not. However, he does understand why they met such a fate. He recalls that the 500 names carved into the tombstone belonged to the knights who followed him during the Great Expedition. Back then, he never found it strange that he did not know their names, nor did he ever try to remember them. To him, they had not been important named NPCs, even though they fought for his sake. He dismissed it all as nothing more than part of the game. The woman drops to the ground, cursing Wilhelm and crying for him to return her son. He had promised he would come back and told her there was no need to worry. Randolph walks toward her, and Isabella asks where he is going. The mother cries out, asking how he could do such a thing. Then, all at once, her awareness begins to fade. Her body gives way, and she starts to fall. Randolph catches her before she reaches the ground. The villagers shout that Grandma May has fainted. Isabella moves closer to the Starbearer. Randolph simply says they are going to the relief station. They arrive at the relief station run by the goddess's church. Hudson remarks that the place is filled with many patients, yet there are far too few staff members to help everyone, making him wonder how such a major city can be so understaffed. It appears there is a serious issue with the way the place is managed. A priest asks whether they are the outsiders who brought Sister May. He says they could have simply pie, yet they chose to be kind. Hudson merely nods in agreement, dazzled by the priest's gentle radiance. Then the priest leans closer to his face. He explains that the relief station depends on visitor donations, and a contribution of 50 gold would be a great help. Randolph says a church-operated relief station should be supported by the city's treasury. Besides, with gold flowing through Arcana every day, asking an ordinary citizen for a month's wages as a fee makes no sense. The priest says they have no other option. Andrew explains that from now on, they must accept donations to keep the relief shelter running. Randolph says the priest should not be that kind of man. Andrew is a high-ranking priest of the Church of the Goddesses, serving the twins Leah and Pina. He is an NPC who offers honor quests tied to class creation, known for being devout, wise, and honorable. Yet that same Andrew is now quietly taking private donations. Randolph recalls the poorly maintained buildings he noticed on the way, the homeless people in the streets, and this neglected relief post all feel strange, since this city is supposed to be wealthy. He wonders what in the world happened to this place. A table is covered with drinks of the finest quality. A secretary tries to stop him, saying his lord has already drunk too much, but he hurls the bottle toward the butler instead. He orders the man to keep his mouth shut immediately. Marquis Weiser then commands him to bring more alcohol at once. Randolph takes a moment to assess the situation. He says he needs to speak with the priest directly, leaving the man surprised. The man explains that many people are waiting for the priest's treatment, but Randolph calls for Hudson. Hudson then takes out a bag filled with gold. He says they are making a donation of 50,000 gold. He adds that they will double it if they can meet him immediately. The man's eyes brighten the moment he sees the money. Quickly shouts that he will escort the brother at once. They enter a room lined with books. Andrew introduces himself to the protagonist. He invites them to sit and talk, and Randolph agrees. The priest says he heard Randolph made a generous donation to his relief post. Randolph replies that he heard they request 50 gold as a donation, so he assumed an ordinary amount would not be enough. Andrew asks if Randolph is disappointed to find only a greedy old man before him, saying he is deeply ashamed. Randolph answers that he is simply curious how a relief post in such a massive city could become this desperate for money. Andrew keeps his posture straight. Then he says he heard Randolph brought Sister May in after she collapsed. Her only son joined the great expedition to the demonic continent and never returned, leaving her to live with that pain ever since. She was not the only one, as many people lost loved ones when countless knights who admired Wilhelm failed to return. The cavalry lost countless talents and consumed resources for war, though the once prosperous city might still have recovered. True crisis began when Serengeti, his blood relative, came back. She returned without the use of her legs, and for reasons unknown, she remains unconscious. Many priests tried to wake her, using every method they knew, but nothing had any effect. Because of this, the city's finances collapsed, while the Marquis was deceived by swindlers, taking on huge debts and pledging the territory as collateral. After that, his lordship fell into despair and lost himself. As a result, every city subsidy was cut, leaving this as the only relief post. If it disappears, all patients will be abandoned. That is why they shamelessly ask for donations, even from brothers who helped Sister May, because they lack beds, supplies, and staff. Randolph says he is starting to understand, and that Serengeti may be unconscious because of mental trauma or a physical issue. Andrew says they would have treated that long ago if it were so simple. It appears to be a curse, but one beyond their ability. The protagonist repeats that thought inwardly, wondering how Isabella could break it with her blessing. He then thanks Andrew and says he must leave, because he has business with the Marquis, startling the priest. Andrew asks him to wait, explaining that his lordship has shut himself away and rarely accepts visitors. He says it cannot exactly be called a reward for the donation, but if Randolph gives him a few days, he can arrange a meeting. Randolph replies that he has no time. He tells Andrew not to worry about the donation, since he has already received what he paid for. Just then, a voice calls out for Father Andrew. The voice announces that her ladyship wants the guest who made the donation brought in. Randolph remarks that arriving with money makes them open the door immediately. He starts to leave, but the priest asks him to wait. Andrew says that regardless of the reason, he is grateful for the help, while Randolph tells him not to worry, because it was not his money anyway. But the priest says he is not talking about the donation, but about what Randolph did for May. A smile slowly appears on Randolph's face. He says it is nice to meet Andrew again. The priest wonders what he means by saying they have met before. At the palace of Marquis Weiser, Isabella and Hudson stand before the guards. Meanwhile, the protagonist sits at the dining table. The Marquis drinks his tea while staring at him with cold eyes. He wonders if this is the man who donated 100,000 gold coins to Relief Post. Since he brought no supplies, he may simply be wealthy. He apologizes for inviting him so suddenly and introduces himself as Weiser, Lord of the Garden of Knights. Randolph thinks his outer appearance has changed quite a lot. Weiser was once a renowned knight whose skill spread across the continent. With his support, his daughter Serengeti obtained a star and transcended. She then became one of the continent's strongest figures. Because of that, the House of Marquis Weiser secured its status and preserved its influence in the kingdom of Balran. In return, Weiser pledged his loyalty to him. Weiser was a man who answered grudges with a blade and kindness with loyalty. Now, Randolph cannot tell whether only his face changed or his heart as well. The Marquis says Randolph likely knows why he was invited. The garden is in severe financial trouble, so he wants to suggest a deal that benefits them both. Randolph refuses and says he will heal Serengeti. Weiser is taken aback by his words, and he breaks into wild laughter. He He says he was wrong to think Randolph was merely a wealthy young master. He says rumors have spread across the continent that mentioning the Marquise's daughter will make him throw money around. Then he shouts, asking how much it will cost to heal her. Immediately after, he strikes the table hard. He says he has already been fooled by people like him and has lost far too much. He demands to know what else he must offer before Randolph is satisfied. Calling it a waste of time, he orders the guards to punish the swindler by taking his sight. Randolph says he does not need money and asks Weiser to listen. He says he cannot promise success, but there is a chance he can heal her. Weiser calls it a creative tactic and asks why he would do such a thing, assuming he truly could cure her. Randolph says he is repaying a debt to him, while also coming to collect one. He introduces himself as the successor of Wilhelm, the Night King to whom Weiser once swore loyalty. He tells him to bring him to his daughter because he has something to ask her, and in return, he will treat her. Weiser laughs, repeating that Randolph calls himself the Night King's successor. Continent is already crawling with people claiming to be successors, so he orders the guards to end him, along with the two people waiting outside. One guard steps forward with his sword drawn. Randolph merely shifts his eyes toward him. Then he brings the teacup down against the table. He blocks the guard's strike and orders them to prepare the proper place, because he intends to prove it. He is Wilhelm's true successor. Weiser observes everything from above. Two figures face each other in the arena. Hudson asks what happened to create a duel, and Isabella says Randolph has always been hard to predict. Randolph rolls his neck, preparing himself for battle. Then he studies the opponent standing before him. The man wears armor blessed by a high-level priest and has clearly prepared thoroughly for this fight. The soldier asks if Randolph is truly the Night King's successor, saying that if he is lying, he should confess and beg forgiveness while he still can. Randolph says it does not matter and tells him to keep his promise, hide Randolph's identity, and never reveal who defeated him. The soldier swears on his knightly honor that he will keep it secret. Then he thrusts forward, saying he wants to test the skill of the so-called successor to the Night King. Randolph avoids the attack, thinking the man is fast. The swordsman instantly shifts the path of his strike. He aims for a clean slash as the protagonist slips away. Randolph notes that many high-level knights were lost during the Great Expedition, yet even this man currently has better stats than him. With that gap in equipment as well, he cannot look down on him as the knight positions his sword to stop the draw, so the knight attempts a downward blow. The arc of the strike closes in. Randolph clenches his teeth in frustration. He blocks the sword's hilt with his head. Everyone is stunned by what he just did. They say they never expected him to block the sword with his own head. He is no fraud, but a genuine madman, while Randolph glares at him with clear hatred. Weiser says his movements are acceptable, yet they amount to nothing more than petty tricks. He has seen countless fools pretend to be the Night King's successor just to gain an advantage. But that swordsmanship cannot be copied, and after witnessing it himself, he knows it went beyond normal human understanding. Unless he can display a technique of that caliber, he has no right to call himself the successor. Guard blocks the attacks, noting that Randolph is unlike the ruffians he has met and clearly has real talent. He tells Randolph to confess his lies and serve under him, promising to ask the Lord for mercy. But Randolph says he sounds far too confident for someone merely holding the advantage. The soldier answers that Randolph should understand these are the Lord's commands. He adds that he does not feel good about it, but Randolph cuts him off with a high kick. He draws his sword and says he will show him. He will show off his incredibly powerful items as well. Then he lunges forward. The soldier is caught off guard by the move. Randolph throws Michaela's sword aside. He then pulls out two extreme iron swords. Everyone questions the sudden appearance of the twin weapons. Hudson wonders when Randolph even obtained something like that. The protagonist starts pressing the guard with a series of powerful strikes. The soldier realizes the timing between attacks has grown shorter and that Randolph is trying to win through speed. Even so, his armor is only being lightly scratched. He remarks that the attacks are much too weak. A two-handed sword is slower but strong enough to damage through armor, while dual swords lack that same force. Because of that, he only has to guard a few spots, but then the protagonist cuts straight through his sword. The soldier is left completely baffled by what just happened. Randolph pulls Michaela's sword back out of the ground. The man asks whether he actually switched weapons. The protagonist tells him to watch carefully, because he will now reveal the true sword of the Night King. Earlier, when he was inside the Tower of Spirits, he was allowed to select 2 rewards from the list. Then he notices something unusual. An experience boost is granted through the Extreme Iron Sword. As a Transcendent version, its stats are lower, but its effects are remarkably strong. He can pick 2 rewards and also gain the Extreme Set bonus, and so he obtains the weapons. Every one of his skills levels up, giving them stronger effects. Beyond that, he can read memories from his constellation. He recreates part of Wilhelm's swordsmanship, the style of the Night King. Back in the present, Randolph keeps up his fierce attack. The soldier struggles to guard against the endless barrage. but the protagonist breaks through his posture. The soldier wonders what kind of movement technique this could be. He is being pushed back. He needs to stop this and regain some distance. Randolph asks how it feels to be caught inside a web of threads. If he backs away, the protagonist rushes in with dual swords, and if he relies on power, Randolph uses the two-handed sword to throw him off balance. He wonders whether such swordsmanship truly exists, a style that refuses to stay bound to one form. It feels as though space itself is bending to his will. When humans face something beyond understanding, they become stunned, trapped in a state where they can only watch. That silence falls over everyone in the training grounds. Even the knight standing against him is no exception. His neck is struck by the Sword King's secret technique, a world-shattering blow delivered as a flawless slash. Smoke slowly begins to clear. The protagonist remains in his battle stance, but the soldier lets his sword fall. With blood at his neck, he speaks. He admits that he has lost this duel to the protagonist. Randolph lowers his head, breathing heavily. Then he shouts, asking whether they still need him to prove anything else. The secretary calls out to his lord. Weiser then turns his attention to Lucas. He bows and tells him to show the man proper respect. After all, he is the successor of Wilhelm, the revered knight. Inside the mansion, in a room washed in white, Serengeti lies there resting, and the Marquis explains that she has remained this way since returning from the great expedition. He tried every method to wake her, from famous elixirs to skilled healers, but the curse proved far too strong. Randolph looks at her lying on the bed. He activates his great sage ability. As he expected, she is under the Demon King's curse. Even the Saint and Holy Emperor could not help, but an exorcism with stellar energy may work. Weiser says he believes him, but asks whether there is any way to wake her. Randolph answers that he will try once. He moves his hand close to her head. Then he grants the girl the blessing of the stars. Weiser is left stunned by what he sees. All of the protagonist's stellar energy is drained away. It is still not enough to break the Demon King's curse. Instead, the curse's grip is only loosened for a short time. Serengeti slowly opens her eyes. She asks where she is. Weiser clenches his teeth. He bends over the bed and asks if she is truly awake. His daughter answers faintly, and her father asks whether she recognizes him. Serengeti turns her gaze toward Hudson, leaving her father bewildered. He demands to know who this man is. Hudson clenches his teeth before forcing himself to speak. He asks her to forgive him for coming so late. Then he calls Serengeti's name once more. He had believed it was enough as long as she lived, and that becoming a council member would make the Marquis acknowledge him. If she had lost half her body, he would have become her legs. As long as she remained alive, he was ready to care for her forever. Hudson believed that if he never gave up, a chance would eventually come. But now he sees it was only arrogance and greed. Opportunities do not last forever, and Serengeti's body keeps losing vitality as the life fades from her face. The strong arms that once wielded a sword have withered like dry branches. If the Star-Bearer had arrived even a little later, Hudson might never have seen her again, and so he apologizes for taking so long to reach her. Weiser asks what Hudson is to his daughter, but Randolph says that is enough. He understands Hudson's emotions, yet the curse has still not been lifted. The Marquis asks if that means she may fall asleep again. The protagonist says he can only preserve her current state for a while. To fully remove the curse, he needs another star. To erase it completely, his stellar energy must grow stronger. He can either level up or recover the 5 stars he lost. Because the successor class lets him read a star's previous owner's memories, he must retrieve them at once. If someone else takes them first, he may never recover them. He has already recovered 1, so 4 remain. He needs to find them quickly. He needs to ask Serengeti about the moment he died, so he tells everyone to leave because he must speak with her alone. In the dining hall, the Marquis and Hudson meet. Weiser asks whether he means they have promised to marry, and Hudson confirms it, apologizing for introducing himself so late. However, the Marquis then draws in a long, heavy breath. He says he appreciates Hudson coming for his daughter, but from this point on, Hudson can no longer meet her. Hudson admits he knows he is not worthy yet, but says he will soon enter the council and prove himself. Weiser answers that this is not the issue. The aftermath of the great expedition was devastating. Restoring Serengeti's knights required a fortune, and in the end, they were forced to seek help. At that moment, the one who reached out to him was Duke San's house, a power that rivals even the King of Valen. Duke San offered them a vast amount of money on the condition that Serengeti be sent to him. Back then, they had no option, since saving her mattered most. Besides, he believed that even if Serengeti never opened her eyes and their family collapsed, the Duke's status would stop him from casting aside a girl under his care. Because of that, she will be sent to Duke San's household in 1 month. It was a decision they had to make to protect Serengeti and this land. Therefore, Hudson should also let her go. Later, inside the room, Serengeti asks who he is. Randolph introduces himself as the heir to the King of Knights, and says he has come to share news of his final moments. Serengeti says that cannot be true because he never had in here. The protagonist thinks her reaction is only natural for his closest comrade. There is no way she would believe such unclear words. So he tells her about the day she first confronted a star. She had always feared that if she consumed a star and became transcendent, she might no longer remain Serengeti. Back then, he could not understand her fear. Now, he guesses it was because she wanted to keep her love for Hudson intact. Serengeti says only the two of them knew that, and Randolph continues by saying that for her, he once offered words meant to strengthen her heart. The girl is even more startled by this. In the past, she had only looked away. Meanwhile, Wilhelm had pushed her forward, telling her to stop talking and simply take the star. Serengeti says he truly is Wilhelm. Randolph explains that his situation is complicated and his appearance has changed. But yes, it is him. He adds that he can tell her more if she wishes. He thinks that the memory of encouraging Serengeti was merely one of 26 expressions, triggered by pressing control and a key. Yet because of the hidden effect of the star successor class, the memory feels so vivid that it is almost as if he lived it himself. Of course, the action does not truly belong to him, but it reflects Wilhelm's character. Serengeti says he was never someone who spoke lightly to others, so that is enough. Then she asks whether he has become a sinner. Randolph confirms it, and she warns him to watch out for hunters. Players who possess others while keeping memories from before their death are called sinners, while the NPCs who pursue them are known as hunters or reapers. Randolph says that no matter how much he thinks about it, there is still something he must ask about his final moments. On that day, he certainly ends the Demon King's life. He is certain he drives the path of light into that man's core, and the Demon King's body starts to collapse. But at the very last instant of the battle, an immense pressure wraps around all of them. Then, everything simply stops in place. After that, his awareness fades away. And just like that, his life comes to an end. That is why he wants Serengeti to tell him the truth of how he truly lost his life that day. The great expedition led by Wilhelm gathers an unmatched force of 200,000 elite soldiers, with their morale at its highest. They had made vast preparations built on carefully collected information. They also had a precise plan designed to handle every possible variable without failure. Everything is perfect, or at least it should have been. Serengeti, unable to stand, looks upward, and she fixes her gaze on the sky. A priestess begs her to keep moving forward, even offering her own life in exchange for a blessing. Another says it is bitter, but this is as far as he can go, so the others must continue. Another wounded soldier tells them they must not stop. Serengeti weeps as she reminds herself that she has to keep going. She thinks that even after stepping forward over so many sacrifices, they still cannot even get close to the Demon King. The undead begin emerging from beneath the ground, advance toward the army of the Great Expedition. They strike as though they already know every move, something impossible unless there is a traitor among the demons. In the end, the expedition had already begun collapsing from the inside, right from the beginning. She wonders whether the mission was impossible from the start. The protagonist lights up the battlefield and declares that it is not over yet. Every undead creature is pulled toward that brilliant light. A moment later, they are swept away by his power. Wilhelm says she looks completely worn out, and for the moment, she should take a rest. After all, this will be settled before long. Serengeti is taken aback by what he says. The god of war, or more accurately, the king of knights, carries an almost overpowering aura. It is enough to make even the demons seem pitiful. With one swing, he can reshape the land itself. A heavy sense of hopelessness murmurs that it is already finished. Yet that man slices straight through despair with only one blade. Wilhelm keeps his cold gaze fixed ahead. He moves forward while carrying Serengeti in his arms. She says he does not have to carry her since her body has recovered somewhat, but Wilhelm tells her not to worry. He is only helping her save her strength. Aside from the injured person who was sent back to the entrance, they are the only ones remaining. So no matter what, she must at least make it back alive, especially since she cries every night, saying she misses that Hudson. Serengeti insists that she has never cried. Even so, she says she will absolutely return to him. Then a magic circle suddenly appears beneath them. Serengeti lowers her eyes in confusion. Wilhelm gives a faint smile and says, in all honesty, this game is far from easy. The girl cries out his name. The god of war tells her to go back, get married, or start a relationship if that is what she wants. But above all, she has to live well. Serengeti realizes she can survive, because the king of knights saved her and gave her another chance to live. Even if she returns by herself, no one could blame her. That is how horrifying this battle has become. If she simply goes back, she can see the man she longs for and live an ordinary, peaceful life. If she only manages to escape from that place alive, she will be able to face Hudson again. But deep inside, Serengeti silently apologizes. Then she activates her position swap ability. Wilhelm is shocked when he is pulled into it. The magic circle bursts apart. Then, from within the drifting smoke, Wilhelm appears, utterly stunned by what has happened. He finds Serengeti collapsed on the ground, with both legs severely lost. loss. She says she was fortunate her body survived the trap. Although she lost her legs, the elixir he gave her kept her alive. Wilhelm realizes he acted recklessly, and because he was so absorbed in the game, he made an overly dramatic exit. The girl explains that Wilhelm hid her by placing the Supreme Protection Talisman on her body. Because of that, the Demon King failed to notice her, letting her watch until the end. Randolph says he remembers that part, but it is not what he wants to know. The girl replies that he must be asking about what happened afterward. Demon King appeared right after that, and just as Randolph remembers, he was indeed defeated. But then Wilhelm suddenly goes still, as though time itself has frozen. Even though his weapon is already driven into the Demon King, he says it was bold for a 5-star transcendent to think he could push this far without the goddess' attention. But that very mistake is what ends up costing him his life. Without the goddess's authority, he can shatter his form, but he cannot erase his essence. He offers his respect to the god of war. As a tribute, instead of taking his damaged remains, he chooses his body as a new vessel. A surge of chaotic energy then spreads across the area. It gathers into a raging storm of power. A ray of light pierces through it, and moments later it is completely destroyed. Demon King says there is no way that thing is as a star. He intended to destroy everyone, but he cannot, because he too is a god. Wilhelm then loses consciousness. Demon King roars that he will take revenge. Meanwhile, the god of war lies collapsed on the ground. Serengeti says she cannot remember anything after that. Protagonist concludes that the Demon King tried to seize Wilhelm's body, and that a goddess intervened to help him. He wants to understand what in the world is happening. At the same time, near the kingdom wall, the guards grumble that spending time in that place is painfully dull. Another answers that every lower-ranking soldier will have their pay pushed back. The reason is that night shifts cannot be properly reassigned, and no one wants to remain in such a decaying place. Another guard agrees, while his companion asks why the Grimm are speaking. Yet several shapes can be seen moving through the mist. At that moment, the guard starts to panic. He cries out that monsters have appeared. Creatures then charge straight toward the wall. They shout a warning, saying a monster wave has arrived and the city is under assault. Long ago, a war between light and darkness broke out across Pangania. Goddess Leia lost her life during that war. Afterward, the entire continent sank in profound darkness. From then on, the continent became cut off, with road ends sealed by a black void. To reconnect the divided regions, people eventually poured enormous amounts of money into building portals. In other words, portals became vital for travel, yet they remained mysterious and unpredictable objects. If left neglected, they could link to the black void and turn into a catastrophe. Now, returning to what happened earlier, Randolph is seated in the room together with Serengeti. He reasons that, based on her words, the Demon King tried to seize his body, while Pina intervened. He still has more doubts than answers, but if he pieces everything together, the reason he failed to finish the Demon King was that his PC suddenly blue-screened. However, Serengeti saw everything, meaning the NPCs inside the game were not affected. That suggests users playing the game may have been prevented, for some reason, from deliberately defeating the Demon King. The one capable of destroying the true essence is not a user, but a player who has entered this world. That may explain why they arrived in this other world. If losing a game, life summons someone as a player, then Wilhelm was not his first character. After losing his strongest character, he himself becomes the player. He always enjoyed hardcore games and kept creating characters, but if one was weak, he abandoned it. Because of that growing gap, ordinary characters never triggered the summoning. He cannot be certain, but for now this theory seems most plausible, and he knows what must be done. First are the traitors who disrupted his expedition and attacked, as though they already knew his route, something impossible without inside help. There is a strong chance they are the 8 heroes he has never even met. He will track down every wretch who got in his way. Second, if he failed to destroy the Demon King's essence, then there is a high possibility it still exists. He will end the Demon King himself and put a stop to everything. Just then, a voice suddenly calls out to the Starbearer. Hudson yells that the situation has become extremely serious. The city is being attacked by monsters. Outside, he sees a scene of bleak devastation. Monsters are swarming around the monument built in honor of the knights. The guards struggle to hold them back, but many of them fall while trying to defend the city. Isabella says an invasion this large resembles a monster wave that burst out from a nearby portal. Randolph remembers Weiser mentioning the ruined city, yet he had even withdrawn the funds meant for portal maintenance. Knights come riding in on horseback. They battle the monsters with swords and lances. Randolph shouts Marcus Weiser's name. The man turns back and calls him Wilhelm's successor. He asks whether Randolph is still in the city, while Randolph demands to know what is going on. The Marquis says the situation is plain to see. Monsters are ruining everything, and something seems to have gone wrong with the 3 portals to the east and west. Hudson protests that 3 portals failing at once is absurd, and Randolph calls it complete insanity. The Marcus admits it is shameful, but pleads for his help, saying his strength would make a huge difference. The city defense mission would offer both honor and a large amount of experience. He adds that the reward depends on completion time and can become even better. The protagonist wonders whether Weiser has completely lost his mind. Weiser shouts that he is truly begging, because the city's current forces cannot handle this. Hudson pleads for help in Serengeti's territory while Isabella says they cannot make such a decision on emotion alone. Randolph realizes this is the worst situation they could have faced. For the moment, the enemies are only ordinary monsters, so the defenders are still holding out. But once 10 minutes pass and a hybrid appears, they will be completely overwhelmed. Hybrid is something neither he nor anyone else present can deal with right now. The only way to stop them from appearing is to destroy all 3 portals and finish the mission before 10 minutes are up. However, for that to become possible, their fighting power is still nowhere near enough. With the regular troops tied up protecting the city, the Order of Knights, and the 3 of them must cut through a massive monster wave. It is a risky gamble, but the Golden Scale Shop upgrade is likely tied to synchronization, so he cannot simply walk away. The timing could not be worse, and they have had no chance to prepare. But finishing the main quest here is impossible. That means there is no reason to waste his life on something so meaningless. Through the smoke covering the area, Randolph tells himself not to lose focus until a scream reaches his ears. Civilians trapped in the flames cry desperately for help. They are being brought down by nothing more than goblins. Cruel as always, the creatures even attack from behind. The people flee as far as their legs can carry them. Because of the chaos, children burst into tears. In the middle of the grim scene left behind by those monsters, she begs for anyone nearby to save them. Randolph stares at it all with a cold face, his fist tightening. Weiser is suddenly caught off guard. He sees Priest Andrew carrying a wounded man in his arms. Then he orders the knights to follow his lead. They must hold back the monsters pursuing Priest Andrew. He swings his golden sword into motion, bringing down a monster with effortless precision. He tells the priest to take a horse, because they cannot rescue everyone, and if the priest is lost, hope disappears with him. Andrew answers that he cannot do such a thing. Just then, a goblin closes in from his side. Andrew's eyes open wide in shock, but Isabella reacts fast and cuts the goblin down. Weiser becomes even more startled. Andrew calls out to his sister, and the other 2 come toward them. Randolph says this will not be easy, and anyone who wants to retreat may leave now. Hudson says this is about defending Serengeti, so he will lend his strength. Isabella remarks that he speaks as though things ever get peaceful. Randolph says he was simply admitting that he badly needs their help. No sensible person would accept a mission like this, and with the city in such chaos, completing it should be nearly impossible. The reason he takes the mission is not because he pities the people, nor is it because he is responsible for the ruined city. It is not even to protect the family of a subordinate who lost his legs, and it is not guilt over those who were lost because of him. It is because he is a reckless man who comes alive in danger. So he declares that from this moment on, they will split the monster wave straight through the center. The horses surge forward at full speed. With Marcus Weiser leading the charge, they ride directly toward the enormous monster horde ahead. A soldier asks if they truly intend to keep advancing like this, since one mistake will leave them trapped among enemy lines. He calls to the Marcus again. Weiser understands that this is almost the same as sending them to their end. After hearing what Randolph said earlier, Weiser tries to object, saying their strength cannot support a frontal attack because they will be surrounded and overwhelmed. Randolph asks whether they have any other choice. As long as the teleporters inside the walls remain intact, the horde will keep coming. Success is not optional. They have to make it happen. He says he will clear the way for their advance, so no matter what occurs, they must never retreat. Weiser roars for everyone to keep their speed no matter what. They cannot stop moving forward, even as a giant monster brings its tentacle crashing down. Weiser thinks that he will place his complete trust in him. The heir to Wilhelm, Randolph says the old man only knows how to charge straight ahead. This distance is enough, because the target is now within range. He throws his spear, slicing through one of the octopus's tentacles. The monster is thrown into panic by this. Randolph then activates the teleport book. A few moments later, the druids appear at that spot. The linked location is Bassrock Forest. The High Druid says he will repay what was done for the forest. Then they unleash a fierce rain of arrows upon the monsters. Weiser looks back and asks what is happening. Hudson says the druids have arrived to support them, and it seems Randolph truly had a hidden card prepared. Randolph thinks he never expected the reward from the forest. Druid's friendship would prove this valuable. More than that, they never turn their backs on a friend they trust. Stopping by the forest had been unbelievably fortunate. Now, he hopes they will show everyone the true value of friendship. Their leader grips his bow firmly. He draws an arrow and says a monster is blocking their route, and he understands they intend to break straight through. Gathering his strength, he tells Randolph not to worry and to keep moving forward, because he will carry out that one request. he will open a road for his friend. The arrow cuts through the air in a clean line. It races toward the octopus with unbelievable speed. The instant the arrow strikes its target, everything nearby erupts with astonishing accuracy. Several monsters are brought down in the blast. Others are left badly damaged and thrown aside. The entire area is left in ruin, yet it opens a clear road for the cavalry. They push ahead, clenching their teeth through the fear. Then one of them cries out that they have successfully broken through the newly opened route. Hudson shouts that they made it. Isabella says all that remains is to destroy the teleporter and end this. Randolph thinks it is hard to believe they cleared the way so easily, realizing this is the strength of a level 9 raid boss. Weiser yells for everyone to stay alert. It is still too soon to celebrate, because the monster horde has not been stopped yet. He says the hybrid will emerge in about 6 minutes, and all 3 teleporters must be destroyed, so they will split into 3 units. Randolph says they will divide into 2 groups instead. Weiser argues that they cannot ignore one teleporter, and Randolph says he understands, but there is a reason. Even if the druids hold the horde back, many monsters will still remain guarding each teleporter. If they divide into 3 teams, they will never destroy all 3 in time. From his view, 2 units are the absolute limit. Weiser asks what they will do about the remaining teleporter, since there is no time to destroy one and move to the next. Randolph gives no immediate answer. He says he will go with only Priest Andrew, and Weiser shouts that the idea is absurd. Randolph asks them to believe in him, because this path gives them the greatest chance of success. Still, the teleporters must be destroyed at least 30 seconds before the hybrid appears. The Marcus says he will trust him, and with that he advances while placing his faith in the protagonist. Hudson says Randolph must have a plan again, while Isabella tells him not to doubt them. She says Randolph always does things beyond their imagination, and this time will be no different. Andrew asks what they are supposed to do and how, but Randolph only says they will destroy the teleporter. He tells Andrew to stay quiet, because he is still working that part out. He thinks Isabella, Hudson, and the old man have gone toward the other 2 teleporters. Monsters will guard them, but in smaller numbers, so each team should manage. The real issue is that the mutant monster will appear from the last portal. That is the Black Warrior's final attack pattern. It is far stronger than ordinary monsters, so he has to handle it himself. Leaving it to anyone else would make the outcome too uncertain. The minimum time needed to defeat it is 30 seconds. With Andrew supporting him, it should be possible, but any delay will make their chances collapse. All he can do now is believe. He trusts that they will succeed, while Andrew asks if that creature is a Hydreigon. The withered hybrid will appear in 5 minutes. The remaining time falls to 4 minutes. Then it drops to 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Soon, only 1 minute and 4 seconds remain. At last, the countdown reaches 34 seconds. From inside the final portal, Hydrogen arrives with only 30 seconds remaining. Randolph thinks the minimum requirement has finally been satisfied. Now that the mutant's presence has been detected, all that is left is teleportation. He is about to appear at any moment. Once that happens, a huge explosion will erupt at the location. The mutant monster steps into the area. The Black Warrior reveals itself. It gazes coldly at the people standing before it. However, it soon senses that something is different. Randolph realizes that only one is left. One more remains, strengthened by the priest's enhancements. Black Flesh Hybrid still needs a little time before appearing. In total, 28 seconds remain. Under the city's gray, clouded sky, rain begins falling over the soldiers. They rush at full speed toward the final portal. The Marcus thinks he is being guarded by Wilhelm's successor, yet there is barely any time left. They must move quickly, and Randolph puts on his armor. The effect of the Celestial Dragon set activates. He bursts forward at frightening speed, charging straight toward the Black Warrior. He looks down at the monster with an icy stare. The boots of Hermes he wears grant him a surge of speed. In the next instant, the protagonist comes to a stop behind the monster. He brings his sword down toward the portal, but the Black Warrior seizes him before he can finish. It hurls the protagonist aside as though he were a doll. Even so, Randolph struggles to keep himself upright. The blue-tinged energy suddenly swells before him. Monsters lunge at him with unreasonable speed. They close in from every side in a shameless assault. Yet he answers with several lightning-fast slashes. Reinforced hydrogen is defeated, and its cooldown becomes 1 full day. The Black Warrior still stands firmly at the center. There are 21 seconds left before the Black Flesh Hybrid is summoned. Randolph moves forward again, preparing to thrust his blade. The Black Warrior avoids the strike. It equips the extreme iron sword to confront him. The Black Warrior instantly pulls back. It spins its sword and slices across Randolph's arm. The protagonist is quickly healed. It is thanks to the enhancements Father Andrew placed on him. The Black Warrior swings its weapon once again. A burst of energy sends the protagonist flying back. There are 17 seconds left before the jerky hybrid is summoned. Father Andrew is left completely speechless at the sight, but this time the Black Warrior charges directly toward him. The man is frozen in terror. Then Randolph appears in front of him and blocks the attack. Father Andrew is thrown backward into the monsters. However, the protagonist deals with them effortlessly. The 2 of them are surrounded by creatures, with the Black Demon still battle looming nearby. Randolph then lowers his gaze. He uses Star Piercer, a skill that is still only level 1. Andrew is shocked by what he sees. Protagonist activates his extreme sword's dual wield. He moves with overpowering speed. The Black Warrior tries to respond. As their swords clash, the countdown to the hybrid's arrival falls to 11 seconds. A tremendous burst of power erupts at the scene. When the smoke clears, the force of the clash leaves blood coughed onto the ground. Randolph blocks the Black Warrior's strike and drives his blade through him. The monster stays silent until the very end. Randolph plunges his sword into its foot. A smile spreads across his face as he says at last, "It will finally stay silent and keep away from everyone." Then he shouts for Priest Drew. He tells him to begin the prayer of adoration immediately. Randolph yells that Andrew must pray only to him and worship no one else. And only 4 minutes were left. They move forward with Hydrogen taking the lead. Andrew asks whether the two of them can truly manage this. He says he does not want to doubt Randolph, but in this situation, he cannot stay calm. Randolph answers that with enough time they could succeed, but with his current skill level, finishing within the limit is impossible. Andrew asks why they came alone and whether Randolph understands that if they fail, everyone will lose their lives. Randolph asks if he truly wants to save every person in the city. If he does, then he must offer a prayer of adoration to Randolph. It is a sincere prayer given to a goddess by a high-ranking priest connected to her, and only a chosen few are able to recite it. If that prayer is directed at someone other than the goddess, the chosen target receives similar power for a brief time, but offering the prayer of adoration means it will be the priest's final prayer, and he will be forsaken. Andrew is an NPC made solely to serve her. For him, being abandoned by the goddess is a suffering deeper than any wound to the heart. It would feel as if his entire world had fallen lifeless. Randolph realizes that, in other words, this is a supreme technique that risks everything the priest has, and he is asking this man to turn away from the world he devoted his whole life to. Andrew asks how Randolph knows he can use it, since he has never spoken of it to anyone except a few priests and her. Randolph says the reason does not matter, only that Andrew can use it. Andrew replies that if Randolph knows about it, he must also understand its meaning. The protagonist admits this, yet he still built the plan around Andrew using it, believing that sacrificing his faith could open a path to victory. It was also a plan made with the knowledge that Andrew could not refuse, because everything Randolph knew about him said he would never abandon his people. In truth, it was nearly the same as forcing him into sacrifice by holding the people as leverage. Andrew then thanks Randolph for saying it. Tears fall as he says that without Randolph's words, he could never have brought it up himself, and would have lived burdened by guilt for failing to save anyone. Randolph is left utterly speechless after hearing him say that. Andrew, an NPC who gives many quests used for farming her, was actually a sincere priest and a sage of Pangania. Randolph respects him more than any other human, and at that moment, the system announces that the prayer has been activated. His strength, health, agility, intelligence, star power, and other abilities begin rising to an extraordinary degree. However, because the target's level is low, the duration of the effect has been drastically shortened. The enhancement will last for only 2 seconds. He says that with these stats, he can at least imitate Wilhelm, and he tells the monster to watch closely, because if this had been his past self, he never would have used this technique on a hideous creature like it. The falling raindrops come to a stop, but in the very next moment, a tremendous force strikes them. The sword art of Wilhelm, the King of Knights, sweeps across the entire area. Under the force of the strike, the Dark Warrior begins to break apart. This was the cleaver of heaven and earth, a technique that splits its target straight through the center. The sky itself seems divided by that brilliant swordsmanship. The women of the village raise their eyes. The men look up as well and realize what it was. Andrew can hardly believe the sight before him. Randolph then calls out to Father Andrew. He tells him that Andrew saved the city while he himself destroyed the portal. The mission ends at 9 minutes and 59 seconds, and the protagonist gains dozens of enhancements. With that, the mission Fix the Hole in the Void is finally completed. Andrew had met Wilhelm, the King of Knights, several years earlier. He begs him not to ignore the plea of this old priest. He asks him to please save his pitiful daughter. His poor daughter Andasar had been cursed by dark magic and transformed into an eldritch being. Even after she became a monster, he still loved her and could not bear to lose her, so he hid her underground, far from the world. As demonic energy continued to consume her, handling her alone became too difficult, and he began searching for help in secret. What mattered most was finding someone strong enough to purify Andasar alone, yet honorable enough to keep the matter hidden. After a long search, at last, Wilhelm turns to face the man, and he orders him to lead the way. As the door to the room opens, the girl stands at the center of everything. Her eyes are black, and her face is badly distorted. Wilhelm asks if that is her, and Andrew confirms it. Pleading for help, the protagonist steps forward, saying he understands and will purify her. Wilhelm, the King of Knights, is the man who saved both him and his daughter. Randolph finally forces the Black Legion back into the abyss. Andrew asks who he is and how he was able to use Wilhelm's sword technique. Randolph answers that they may call him Wilhelm's successor. Andrew thinks he never expected to be saved by the disciple, after once being rescued by the master. It is truly an astonishing twist of fate. Then he coughs up blood and collapses. Randolph rushes over to the priest Andrew. He asks if he is alright, calling out to check whether he is still conscious. Andrew explains that his sacred power disappeared from the side effect of the prayer of worship, and the illness he had suppressed seems to have returned. Randolph realizes his state is severe. He is unsure whether it will succeed, but he decides to try. He says he heard Andrew once received help from his master, and Andrew confirms it. The protagonist says that, in return, Andrew granted his master an indulgence. The King of Knights said he would bear his sins and use the indulgence Andrew had given him. He then declares that he forgives all of Andrew's sins. An indulgence is a pardon that a high priest of the Order of the Goddess can grant only 3 times in life. According to the lore, it is an authority capable of forgiving anything except the 10 deadly sins. In the game, it was an item used to remove suppression points, a penalty placed on trolls. In reality, it is merely a vessel that represents its meaning, since it is born from faith. His contract with Drumat is also a form of faith in the same sense. Drumat was startled and asked how he knew about the contract. Andrew is shocked when his divine power returns, since an indulgence can only be used by the one who received it. Randolph thinks it worked with Drumat, so he gave it a try, though he never expected success. Andrew demands to know what that was. Perhaps he received an indulgence from another priest, but he denies it immediately, thinking he would have known if that were true. He asks whether Randolph received an illegal indulgence, and says he must repent while Andrew prays with him. Randolph thinks he should simply invent an excuse, but the cavalry is already right behind him. Isabella shouts that they have arrived, and asks whether everyone is safe. The protagonist thinks they came at exactly the right moment. He rises and says it looks like they have come to retrieve them, adding that Andrew is more stubborn than expected. They will simply regard this as a blessing from the heavens. The main quest rankings are updated once more, placing Randolph in first. On the day the mission ends, the Dryads use the teleportation book to return to the forest. Their leader tells him not to forget that they will always help if he is in danger, and that city air must be poisoned to beings who live on the forest's essence. Once they depart, the city immediately begins reconstruction. Of course, the city has no funds, so Hudson pays for everything. They choose to hire the kingdom's alchemist to repair the damaged teleporter and prevent future corruption. It is usually expensive, but Hudson's wealth makes it manageable. Andrew regains his sacred power, but must focus on healing himself for a while. Since no priests are available for the wounded, they decide to treat people with potions. Naturally, that also costs money, but Hudson's vast fortune covers it, even as he complains that every problem is being solved with his gold. Randolph says the city was poor and tells him to consider it all for Serengeti's sake. In the castle, he asks whether she has fallen asleep, and Hudson replies that the curse consumed her again after the invasion. Randolph says he understands and tosses something to him. Hudson recognizes it as a high-grade elixir infused with blessings, and asks how he obtained such a treasure, since the Order of the Goddess produces fewer than 10 a year. The protagonist tells him to use 1 drop every 2 hours, and if he continues for a month, her legs will fully recover. Hudson says he thought so. Randolph must be a player and bought it from the Golden Scale shop. Thanks to him, Hudson also completed Mission 4. After seeing the updated rankings, he realized that, if his guess was right, his name must be Randolph. Randolph is the one who obtained many of Pangania's most famous characters, including Wilhelm and Spectre, the legendary user who disappeared not long ago. Randolph says being called legendary makes him embarrassed, then apologizes for hiding it. Hudson says he understands, since revealing such a thing is like inviting danger. He asks what he should call him from now on, but Randolph tells him to keep using the same name. Hudson thanks him for spending golden scales on something like this, but Randolph says he earned plenty of money from taking first place. His friend remarks that the city's weak combat strength greatly influenced the score. The protagonist then starts studying the side panel. The Golden Scale shop sells items using his remaining time, and from now on, it will be essential for survival. The White Dragon's Fang, the Cursed Grimoire of Eldritch, and the Dragon Heart were all core materials he used to craft unique grade items. It might be coincidence, but he cannot imagine anyone else obtaining them, especially because the White King was a monster even Wilhelm had given up on defeating. If equipped items are registered in the shop when a character loses their life, then his remaining time matters even more, and he must move to the next mission. So he declares that he wants to begin the next mission and tells Hudson to look after Serengeti, but Hudson says there is a problem. It seems Marcus Weiser promised, in exchange for money, to to send her to the ducky soon. Moreover, Maxim is one of the 8 heroes lending his strength, so there is no way to stop them now. Randolph realizes this was someone he hired during the Great Expedition, the same rotten coward who ran from the swamp near the entrance. He had planned to confront those men called the 8 great heroes eventually, but it seems one of them will appear sooner than expected. So he tells him to stall for time until he comes back, because if Weiser is asked properly, he should find a way. He will return as fast as he can, and they must not let the duchy take Serengeti. Protagonist says Hudson may not be much of a fighter, but he is still someone she can rely on. In other words, she trusts him deeply, and had also placed her hopes on Hudson. The young man is taken aback by those words. Though his lips do not move, he quietly wishes him a safe journey. The following day arrives. Randolph says there was no need for this, though he has been given fine clothes. He thanks him for the gift, while Weiser says it is nothing grand, and tells him not to worry before wishing him well. Randolph says Hudson should be consulted about the reward, and Hudson will handle the matter. After that, they head toward the monument standing at the city's center. Randolph studies the list of names carved there because of him. He reads James, Noah, Lucas, Jacob, and Zion. They were heroes who fought with greater courage than anyone. They finally find eternal peace. Although it comes far too late, he wants to offer them his heartfelt gratitude. 500 knights find their eternal rest, and the protagonist starts receiving various rewards. Back in the kingdom, a knight asks about the reward he mentioned, and the Marquis says compensation will be given to the families of the knights lost in the Great Expedition. 10,000 gold for each family is an enormous sum. He says Hudson will cover the payment. Isabella asks where the saint is headed, and Randolph answers that he will follow the star's guidance. He adds that there is someone they must bring along, which surprises Isabella. Protagonist confirms it, thinking that this person is needed to strengthen his combat ability. Like Isabella, this is another one of his characters who had been left neglected, Isaac the Lightning Cutter. Several days later, they arrive in the underground dungeon of Crow Cemetery. It is a place where the only sounds are their own. From the darkness, one of the flesh moths appears. The protagonist defeats the dungeon master, the corpse crow, and receives the completion rewards. He gains a broken 9 o'clock golden scale and an evolved corpse crow core. Randolph says it dropped on his first attempt, and Isabella asks what it is. The protagonist explains that it is a material required to enter Cramdal, where Isaac is located. Cramdal, the city of monsters, is ruled by the White King, the guardian deity of the north. It is home to intelligent monsters, mythical races, and unknown beings, and is known as an unconquerable fortress. Even the demon realm and abyss rulers avoid. Under normal circumstances, no human could enter it, but the hidden trait gluttony begins to activate. If the protagonist uses the corpse crow's core, the situation changes completely. Devouring is finished, and the evolution trait starts to awaken. The intense miasma within the corpse crow's core is suppressed by the giant's resistance and the monarch's heart. Because of the Lord of Wounds, the evolved trait's mastery rises, and the process is completed. Gluttony evolves into King of the Corpse Crows, and when Corpse Crow Summon is used, the number summoned depends on his sacred power. Randolph thinks he never expected such a perfect transformation, far more complete than any shapeshifter's imitation. He wonders if the core is the source of the disguise, and it seems the mimicry will vanish if it breaks. The girl asks what happened to his appearance, and Randolph says it is the mimicry of a corpse crow. With this form, he should be able to enter Cramdal without trouble, and he lets out a caw. Isabella asks why he made that sound, and Randolph does it again while wondering if it is a side effect. The girl says he is more dedicated than she expected and seems impressed, but Randolph tells her be quiet and wear this. It is Michelle's set, and equipping it grants the wings of a celestial dragon. However, since her appearance aside from the wings differs from theirs, she will be treated as a draconian. It is fine, since both count as monsters. He has explained enough. Now they need to leave, because a long journey is waiting. The boat moves across the open sea. Isabella wears the set, which adapts itself to the user's gender and level. She says she never knew there was a way to reach Cramdal like this, and Randolph replies that the stars know everything. The girl comments on the monsters traveling aboard the ship. She feels that none of them should be taken lightly. At a glance, she can tell they are level 7 or 8 monsters. A ship filled with such beings even operating feels miraculous, but Randolph says only evolved monsters may enter Cramdal. Monsters bearing the title Evolve possess intelligence close to humans, and they never create trouble inside the territory. The claw moves toward them immediately after. Randolph says that is the rule, and Isabella turns around. The level 9 raid monster, Colossal Grudge, reveals itself. It declares that it is starving, and its claw slowly begins to move. It reaches toward the boat, but a red glow suddenly spreads from the ship. Medusa's eye ability is activated. The Grudge questions its hunger as its body becomes paralyzed. Yet in the very next moment, it lets go of the boat. Isabella asks how a level 9 monster could fall from one strike, and Randolph explains that it is Medusa's power, one of the 4 pillars. No one is allowed to cause disorder within this territory, and anyone who violates that law will lose their life, because that is the rule of this place. That is why the evolved never break the rules. Unlike the low-intelligence monster they just saw, a hooded figure apologizes to the passengers, saying an impurity had slipped into Cramdel's territory. He assures them there is no need to worry and asks everyone to remain calm. They will reach Cramdel soon, so he asks them to forget the unpleasant incident that just occurred. From this moment on, they hope everyone can enjoy a peaceful day. Randolph calls Isabella and says their destination is an unbeatable fortress ruled by monsters, where exposure of their identities could put their lives in danger. She must not lower her guard, even for an instant. Soon, an archway comes into sight. At last, they arrive in the city of Cramdel. The monster calls out, inviting them to the Compassion Hot Springs for purification of body and mind, now offered at half price. He says their unstable bodies need cleansing and promises to serve them with sincere kindness. Isabella says this is nothing like what she imagined. Randolph wonders what on earth happened here. When he visited it as Wilhelm just 1 year ago, this place was barren, with no hot springs and not even a single blade of grass. He wants to know exactly what they have done to this place. Isabella asks whether she may ask him something. She wants to know what kind of person Isaac is, since they came all this way to find him. Isaac the Lightning Cutter is a wanted criminal responsible for countless crimes across the continent. At the very least, he stole from nobles and priests belonging to the goddess's order. At worst, he worked as a mercenary in war-torn cities, raiding supply routes belonging to allies and others alike. He targeted important figures in whole cities, froze teleportation gates to trigger monster waves, and became the chief cause behind mining cities' destruction. Randolph summarizes that Isaac is the most dangerous man in Penguina's history, and Isabella remarks that he sounds rather proud of that. In any case, she now understands that he is someone who barely acts human. Randolph thinks that if he had to justify his actions back then, it was because he feared the player population was shrinking and treated it as protest. Of course, that was before he knew Pangenia was abnormal. He says Isaac will greatly strengthen their side, but Isabella still responds. Now that she knows he is dangerous, if he does anything that even slightly threatens Randolph, she will end him. Randolph says that is reassuring to hear. The girl asks what he looks like. Randolph says he has a lightning-shaped scar on his forehead. His hair is golden blonde, shining like pure gold, and he has celestial dragon wings, just like hers. Just then, in an alley, he spots someone who matches that description exactly. Isaac says the customer does not understand him, insisting his hot spring is both the best and the cheapest. The girl questions whether this is truly the most dangerous man in Pangenia. Isaac yells that the man is not allowed to go home until he visits the hot spring. Isaac thends his gaze to the side. He asks what they want and why they keep staring at him. He notices the celestial dragon wings on Isabella. Randolph says this is a relief, adding that it has been 150 years since he last met a dragon in a place like this. Isabella agrees that it has indeed been 150 years. Randolph says this is exciting, and they absolutely need to catch up. Isaac notes that ignoring the corpses, the woman over there is clearly human, though her mouth is covered. The Eye of Medusa is watching them. Randolph says they should be careful. Then he says they will have a short talk now. One of the city's narrow alleys. Isaac asks how this bastard knows his name, and Randolph warns him that Medusa's eyes are watching, so he should avoid careless words. He tells him not to pretend to be tough, because he knows they are in the same situation. With celestial dragon wings, the monsters mistake Isabella for one of them, but she cannot deceive Isaac's eyes. He entered this place by the same method she used, but unlike Isabella, there is a reason his gear is hidden while only his wings remain visible. He uses an equipment invisibility potion to conceal how he looks. Still, it makes no difference, because he can clearly see every piece of equipment Isaac has on. He quietly says that no matter how well Isaac hides the Michelle Azet, his eyes will not be deceived, so Isaac must choose whether to let this pass or meet a miserable end. Isaac pretends to be a half-dragon of similar rank, acting surprised to meet one of his own kind after so long while faking an introduction. Randolph suggests they move somewhere else to talk properly, and Isaac asks where he has in mind. Then he spots something lying on the ground. He says a hot spring would be just right. They arrive at the hot spring. Isaac tells the old man that he has brought in some customers. He adds that they need 2 rooms since they came from out of town and have nowhere else to stay. The evolved goblin says he warned him not to treat customers like this, but Isaac answers that without such methods, no one would visit this shabby hot spring inn. However, the full bill should be charged to the cactus. He tries to argue that he already reserved a hot spring and that this is obvious extortion. He begs the great hero to help him. Randolph says they saved money thanks to him, while Isabella adds that they appreciate his willingness to help. In any case, they are now at the hot spring. The bath is prepared. After using the Fairy Queen's tears, the protagonist feels his entire body unwind, and Isaac says that if this were common, those monsters would not be so eager to come. Randolph does not remember seeing this before, and Isaac says even he does not know the details, only that they began appearing at some point. Randolph thinks it appeared out of nowhere. nowhere, which may have some meaning. Isaac asks why Randolph came looking for him, since he knows who he is. This was clearly no coincidence, and Randolph says the stars led him here. The lightning cutter remarks that Randolph talks as though he were some kind of saint. A mere corpse crow could never be a saint, and Randolph replies that such words sound rather hypocritical coming from a bandit. Isaac says he was dragged here and had to earn money however he could. Randolph says belief is irrelevant, because he came to make an offer. Isaac must serve him for 1 year, and in return, he will be allowed to leave Cramdal and travel the continent again. Isaac is caught off guard by the proposal, but he says he has no interest in that, and tells them to make sure their paths never cross again, not even by accident. Randolph asks if he intends to keep hiding because of what he remembers from that time. He is referring to the mining town Isaac ruined with his own hands. Randolph keeps a grave expression on his face. Back then, as a protest against the developers, he used Isaac to create every kind of trouble. His karma rose so high that he could no longer enter cities, until he finally reached a village. The village chief was the typical stock villain found in ordinary fantasy stories, someone who embezzled development funds and bribed council members to keep his position. Isaac chose to stay low-key in the village, playing the role of an agent hired by the chief. It was simply a disguise meant to conceal his true strength. Surprisingly, unlike an ordinary minor villain, the village chief was clever and daring. He was also deeply ruthless. He made a man suffer and lose a finger. When this ambitious yet incompetent villain gained a subordinate who pledged loyalty to him, that villain finally had the chance to become something monstrous, and so he walks through the alleys. He says he is truly grateful to Isaac. Because of this mine, a mere village chief has risen to lead a mining town, and the wealth it brings will be more than he could ever spend. Isaac says the mine can take them even higher, while thinking that it is time to seize what he can and leave. The village chief says it will not take much longer. He says he must finish building his village. Workers are trapped in dangerous conditions, unable even to pause. Isaac asks who these people are, and the village chief questions what he means. He says they obviously gathered everyone from the nearby towns. Because of that, they spent a fortune on the royal guard, but it was necessary since they would earn an enormous profit. He notices a child carrying a sack on his back. The boy spits on the ground, looking as if he has lost all will to live. Village chief comes to a stop in front of him. He bends down until he is level with the boy. He asks whether the boy has caught a cold, and the boy says yes, explaining that he has felt unwell since yesterday. The village chief says it would be a problem if the cold spread to others, so the boy should go and rest. He adds that if the boy had not been infected with filthy germs, he could have gotten more use out of him. Then he coldly silences the boy for good, saying it is truly unfortunate. He says they can always raise more brats. Isaac stands frozen, realizing that everything has gone terribly wrong. The village chief says that thanks to Isaac, they could even buy an entire kingdom. Everything has spun beyond control, and Isaac knows he has to set things right again. Randolph continues, saying that afterward, he dealt with the village chief and tried to reform the city, but it was useless because it was already rotten, and new villains kept appearing. That was why he released a monster wave to wipe out the city. In the chaos, countless people were swept up and lost. He says the city would have fallen even without his actions, so Isaac should stop blaming himself. Isaac answers by telling him not to act as if he knows everything. Randolph tells him that if guilt is the reason he remains here, then he is making a mistake. Isaac turns around and demands to know who Randolph thinks he is. Randolph replies that he will end the Demon King, and if Isaac truly wants redemption, he should choose a path that genuinely benefits the world. For that purpose, he is gathering reliable companions who will never betray him. Isaac asks why he should be seen as trustworthy, and Randolph answers that he trusts him fully because he knows far more about him than Isaac realizes. The lightning cutter says he cannot understand a word of it, then brushes it off and asks how a mere king of crows could possibly do that. Randolph says they should make a wager instead of treating it like a proposal. In this city, rank decides one's superiority, so he will prove in the way of monsters that he is no ordinary crow. Isaac asks what exactly he means by that. Randolph answers that he is referring to the Tower of Mysteries in Cramdal. In other words, he plans to gain a mystery there and use it to prove his status. The main mission instructs him to obtain a special mystery. A mystery is a visual effect. In game terms, it is the light or color surrounding a character, while in Pangea, these traits are known as mysteries. Some rare mysteries offer special functions or support certain skills, but aside from those held by guild masters or rulers, most have no real power. In short, they are decorative for most beings. But to monsters, they carry another meaning, symbolizing the qualifications of their species like a lion's mane. Because of that, the higher a mystery's grade is, the higher the monster's status becomes. It can even rise to the level of a raid boss monster. Of course, gaining a good mystery does not directly strengthen one's natural abilities, but powerful monsters usually possess impressive mysteries. One place to obtain high-level mysteries is the Tower of Mysteries in Cramdal. Countless monsters risk climbing it to prove their status, and the higher they climb, the better the grade. Isaac asks if Randolph truly means to prove his worth in the Tower of Mysteries. He says a mere crow like him would not survive 30 minutes before being overwhelmed, and Randolph replies that it would indeed be a pity. Isaac says that is fine and tells him to do as he pleases. The Tower of Mysteries opens in 2 days, and if Randolph proves his status, Isaac will become his comrade, or even his servant. 2 days later they arrive at the Tower of Mysteries. Numerous monsters begin making their way toward the place. Isabella says there are more participants than she expected, while Randolph notes that more than half of them are only spectators. He asks if she is truly fine with not challenging the tower, and Isabella says she already has one. She asks whether he wants her to show it to him, then she releases her aura. Randolph wonders why Isabella possesses the scale of Jormungandr. He asks where she obtained it, and she says she dreamed of a giant snake coiling around her before gaining this mystery, though it has no ability. Randolph wonders if she fulfilled some hidden condition while he was paying too little attention to her. The scale of Jormungandr is one of the 32 stars, granting the right to seek the star no one has discovered yet. The Desert Queen must have recognized Isabella's mystery. That must be why she kept her nearby and placed her on the throne as a princess. If that is true, the Queen will never abandon her pursuit of Isabella. This troubling connection with the Desert Queen may not have ended yet. The girl asks what that was about, and Randolph says it was nothing. He reminds himself to focus on the task at hand, while a small mouse announces that the doors will open soon and all participants must complete their preparations. Those who are ready are told to gather near the road, prompting Randolph to comment on it. Isabella says she will wait for him there. Several monsters step to the front and stop, fixing their eyes on the small mouse. Randolph quickly looks over everyone gathered there. He spots a pureblood standing to one side. There is also a Leviathan that has fully matured. Even a Minotaur King is present, and every one of them is a Calamity-class monster. Today may be an unusual occasion. This should not be something common. The small mouse says many powerful challengers have gathered this time, and the seats of the 5 pillars, Cramdal's new supports, remain empty. The emergence of someone worthy to become a new pillar is something even the White King is eager to witness, and Randolph realizes that must be the reason. The 4 pillars of Cramdal, including Medusa, are each foes that would require a top 30 server player to confront. 4 monsters of that level are already more than enough. So what are they trying to achieve by adding one more? Then a monster behind him tells him to move aside. It asks how a worthless creature like him dares challenge the Tower of Mysteries, and Randolph calmly says that is true. The others are taken aback by his answer, but a moment later, they burst into laughter. They say that if he wants a mystery suited to him, he should look in a convenience store and quietly watch while his children stay at home. It continues, saying he does not know his place, since only at least a high-level beast should challenge this tower. He may have been born slightly stronger than other corpse crows, but he is still only a crow, and this place is not meant for low-level species. It says it understands his wish to change his fate by gaining higher status, but he can never overcome the limits of his species. As the door opens, it shouts for him to learn his place. The system announces that the tower has now opened. Entry will start in 5 seconds, and Randolph remarks that it talks too much. Only about 4 seconds remain. The monster is startled after being called a maggot. The countdown falls to 2 seconds. Randolph says he has memorized that bastard's face. The entrance activates, transporting him to a cliff. As expected, the inside of the tower is made of separate dimensions. Fortunately, it has not changed since his last visit. He thinks the Tower of Mysteries is the only place where, as Wilhelm, he failed to obtain the best reward. Back then, information was limited because he was the first challenger. Not knowing he could not retry, he stopped midway. But the situation is different this time. With every strategy already in his mind, he faces 1,000 level 4 skeleton soldiers. All items are restricted except equipped gear, and the monsters appear at the same level as the participant. From his experience as Wilhelm, he knows the harsh conditions required to conquer the tower. The crucial point is to enter at the lowest level possible. Every monster inside the Tower of Mysteries scales according to the challenger's level. If the challenger is high level, the monsters rise as well, and with higher levels come more varied patterns and unpredictable factors. Of course, entering at a low level alone is not enough. He also needs a character whose power far surpasses the normal stats for that level. He must meet the prerequisite. Without more than 200 talents, the stats and 13 hidden traits needed to reach Cramdal would clearly be impossible. In fact, reaching Cramdal would have been impossible from the beginning. The system informs him that Corpse Crow can be summoned, and its strength depends on his sacred energy, with damage scaling accordingly. The crows begin to appear. Randolph then thinks of the second key factor, his class, which is another reason he chose the Crow Corpse. It has skills built for fighting crowds, and although it is a weak level 4 boss monster, it is the best choice in the game against many enemies. On top of that, skills from a low-tier beast, like the Corpse Crow, level up far faster than those of high-tier beasts. They wipe out every single skeleton. The system tells him his skill level has risen by 1, and the same message repeats several times. Because of his overwhelming number of talents, he cannot level up no matter how many monsters he defeats, but here, he can rapidly raise proficiency. Simply put, he is the only one capable of reaching the end of this place. Isaac tells the cactus to stop dropping them on the ground, because he has to deliver everyone by hand. Handing them out on a busy day would be highly efficient. Everyone is shocked that someone has already cleared one floor of the tower in under 3 hours. The light on the first floor is already shining. Isaac rises to his feet, saying someone has cleared the first floor. Isabella asks what it means when the light turns on. Isaac wonders whether it was the dragonute from earlier. He asks whether she knows nothing about the Tower of Mysteries. When a tower challenger clears a floor, a light comes on, making their progress visible. Everyone looks surprised. Monsters have cleared floors before, since the completion rate is around 30%. Still, clearing it faster than the White King is an impressive achievement. Isabella says the saint has done something incredible again. Isaac asks why she is so certain, since no one knows who cleared it until they come out. Isabella asks if he did not just say this had never happened, then it can only be him. She says she will tell him now because they may cooperate later, and he needs to remember it. When the impossible becomes possible, it happens only through the will of the saint. On one of the tower's floors, a minotaur sits in his chamber, quietly meditating. He is Gungi, one of the 4 great warriors. A monster reports that the tower's light has turned on, and Gungi comments that it happened quickly. He hopes a being worthy of the 5 great warriors appears this time, because he does not want to endure that same humiliation again. 2 years ago, the 4 great warriors were utterly defeated. Their opponent was a single human named Wilhelm. That human spared his life, likely intending to use them as bait to draw out the White King. No matter how much time passes, that disgrace cannot be forgotten. He orders them to notify him when the second floor lights up, since he will personally go if someone strong enough reaches that floor or beyond, even if they are below the 5 warriors. The problem is that the lights have already reached the 4th floor. Gungi is even more astonished by this accomplishment. He asks whether the challenger has already reached the same floor as the White King in such a short time. Then he makes his decision. He sends a message ordering all 4 great warriors to gather at the Tower of Arcana immediately. Back inside the tower, Randolph continues forward. Crows trail after him, moving toward a body. His summoning skill reaches its highest level and evolves into advanced summoning. He has cleared the 4th floor of the Tower of Mysteries, earning the Transcendent Mythic Arcana as a reward. If he declines it, he will move on to another trial. Randolph rejects the reward and proceeds to the 5th floor. Teleportation begins, with the destination decided by the challenger's racial stats. Randolph wonders what that is supposed to mean. The system starts measuring his stats. Void level unknown, Druid level 10, Celestial level 20, and Corpse Crow level 5, reaching 55 points and meeting the tower's final hidden condition. A hidden quest from the Tower Master appears, asking whether he wants to challenge the Mythic Tower of Mysteries. Randolph questions what this hidden quest is. The system warns that refusing will erase the quest and send him to the normal floor. Randolph realizes this is uncharted territory, a mythic realm even Wilhelm never explored. It would probably offer a far greater mystery as a reward, but he sees no clear benefit in accepting such a dangerous risk. Then a thought suddenly comes to him. In this world, he alone has discovered this place. He wonders how many players could ever turn down an unmatched adventure meant only for them. With that in mind, there is no reason to waver, so he chooses to accept the challenge. He finds himself facing 3 enormous skulls. The hidden monster, the awakened skeleton soldier, appears. The creatures here gain the challenger's racial attributes, taking on his druid and giant traits. Randolph realizes they are absorbing the attributes he possesses, and he has no clue what kind of monster he is dealing with. The awakened skeleton soldier begins using the druid's arrow of light spirit. This surprises the protagonist even more. He starts dodging the attacks that come one after another. He plants his foot firmly on a chunk of stone. Hands immediately reach toward him. The awakened giant skeleton activates Giant's Grasp. Randolph is nearly caught in its hold, but he spreads his wings and slips away from the grasping hands. While still airborne, he looks down below. He understands that gaining racial attributes means they can also use that race's skills. Even for a hidden quest, this difficulty has risen far too sharply, so Randolph draws his sword. Every constellation among the 100 stars begins showing interest, and they all turn their gaze toward him. Randolph confronts the monster's arrows of light. He says he never expected every constellation of the temple to watch him at once, and they must either be extremely curious about the hidden mission, or they simply came to enjoy seeing him struggle. Then an explosion bursts out, sweeping through everything in its path. Randolph takes to the air again. He activates Star Piercer once more, and the power of the stars flows through his body for 70 seconds. The protagonist says he wanted to enjoy this as much as possible since the monster is new to him, but now he feels he must finish it quickly. If he drags this battle out for too long, he does not want to hear the constellations complain, and all their attention gathers on him. Outside the tower, everyone is stunned. The light on the top floor has turned on, and they wonder who it could be, since they believed most challengers had already left. Whoever it is must be the strongest and most frightening existence among them all, a being harsh enough to rise beyond every species. It can only be some impossibly terrifying monster. The protagonist group watches from behind the crowd. Isaac thinks it cannot possibly be that crow, since it reached the 5th floor where even the White King failed. The entire crowd begins stepping aside, because the 4 great warriors have arrived. The Earth Dragon remarks that it has been a long time since all of them gathered together. The Snake Queen replies that it has only been 2 years and 87 days. Medusa says nothing. Meanwhile, the Earth Dragon asks what they think happened, and Gungi says he does not know either. Still, a monster is challenging the final floor that even the White King could never reach. He does not believe anything in this world surpasses the White King or Wilhelm, yet perhaps someone equal to both has finally appeared. If so, the absolute rules of Cramdal may no longer matter. That means they must welcome this being, whether it comes as an ally or an enemy. Suddenly, a heavy pressure falls over everyone there. A voice asks if they've been waiting for him. They are waiting for him, the one destined to become the new great warrior. The 2 of them are startled by this. The 4 insist it is not him. While the snake starts boasting, Gungi asks whether there is still a monster species that has not appeared. Suddenly, one foot steps outside. The snake claims her Miss Dragon Arcana was worthy, but Randolph calls her a worm. Then he turns around, and the protagonist tells her to move aside, because he will count to 3. The moment he finishes counting, he touches her. The Miss Dragon Arcana is erased. That worm asks what just happened. Gungi is also shocked by what he has done. Randolph says he will definitely remember him, and that his Arcana is Eternal Randolph, a power that exceeds all standards and grants many advantages. It can also erase lower-grade mysteries, though only once per target. The main mission results begin calculating, and the constellations grant their enhancements. At last, the protagonist gains a level. A waterfall keeps pouring down. Man sits upon a massive rock. He says he can smell something intriguing, a scent he has never encountered before. White King remarks that this is truly fascinating. He has cleared the 5th floor of the Tower of Mysteries. The indomitable challenger's choice is worthy of praise, and he earns the achievement of a challenger who became a myth. More skeletons then rise up from beneath the ground. His fame rises by 500, and the tower declares that his challenge will be recorded forever. All constellations question his achievement and tremble before the supreme mystery. He gains a scale fragment worth 300 hours, and may choose one reward from 100 options. Randolph thinks the rewards have been swapped, leaving no way to tell which ones are genuine. More importantly, the ability to erase an opponent's mystery is absurd, and it even added a hidden trait. It is an arcana without color, scent, or shape. He cannot see it, yet he can clearly sense it. He clenches his fist and decides that, for now, he should head outside. The worm screams, demanding to know what happened to his arcana. This cannot be real. His status has been rejected by a mere crow. Just as he tries to say he will take his life, his body turns to stone. Randolph simply looks at him without any reaction. He thinks that at least someone here actually has some sense. And with that, the Medusa's eye activates. She warns that disturbances in Cramdal are never permitted. Gungi adds that this is the law decreed by the White King, and defying it means becoming his enemy. He asks whether the protagonist is a friend or an enemy. Randolph answers that it depends on how he chooses to act. Gungi thinks that tone is arrogant, but Randolph holds a status that cannot be dismissed. He then says he has no wish to become his enemy and wants to inform the White King that a high-level peer has appeared. Randolph agrees, saying he will gladly accept the invitation. However, he has one condition: his companions must be allowed to come with him. They arrive at the White King's castle. The 4 warriors walk together with the main trio. Isaac asks how he ended up being dragged along, and Randolph asks whether he plans to break his word. He said he would become Randolph's servant if his status was proven, so Randolph says it is only right that he follow this path. Isabella asks if he truly needs to meet the White King himself, and Randolph says he has no reason to reject the invitation, because there is something he wants from him. Gungi then places his hand against the door. He opens it and announces that they have arrived. These are the White King's private chambers. Randolph steps forward. At the same time, the 4 great warriors salute the White King. He remains seated atop the stone. He asks if this is the crow who reached the top of the tower, noting that he looks frail but interesting. Randolph asks if he is the White King. Then he comments that the king is quite rude for a first meeting. Isaac thinks this complete madness. Gungi has no idea how to respond. The White King repeats the word manners. Then he asks whether he should truly concern himself with such things. Randolph realizes this is unquestionably a final boss. and without his hidden traits, the pressure alone would have stopped his heart by now. In Pangania, monsters can level up like players by gaining experience through taking lives, but unlike players, they have no level cap. Leveling up is not simple because they constantly risk their lives, yet in theory, they can keep growing endlessly as long as they survive. A level 11 monster equals a 1-star transcendent player, while level 12 holds power comparable to 2 stars, and the White King before him releases a pressure so intense that everyone in the room is struck with fear. That overwhelming aura surges straight toward the protagonist. Even the surrounding sea begins to shake beneath its force. The giant's anti-demon energy activates, along with the heart of the Iron Monarch. Together, they shield the protagonist from being harmed. The Tiger King is level 15, and with Wilhelm and the Demon King gone, he now stands as the absolute ruler of this world. Randolph must be cautious, because even a single breath from the king could tear him apart right now. Even so, he forces himself to swallow hard. He says that showing respect to a guest is only basic etiquette. Isaac notices that Randolph has not retreated even slightly before the White King's aura. The bull thinks he knew this man was unusual, but he never expected him to remain steady under such tremendous pressure. Perhaps he truly possesses strength on par with the White King. The tiger's mouth curves into a grin. Then he suddenly bursts into loud laughter. He says Randolph is an odd one, and now he understands why the 4 great warriors brought him here. Randolph thinks his plan has worked. White King, he knows, ignores anything that fails to interest him, fiercely claims what belongs to him, and lives like a wild spirit ruled by instinct. In the past, the tiger said that if things continued, nothing would remain of Cramdell. He called it a shame, but said the fight had to end there, since it would be troublesome if his home were destroyed. Wilhelm replied that this was not his home, and the White King answered that he truly lacked manners. After that, he let out a laugh. He tossed over his tooth, telling Wilhelm to take it as a reward for sparing his warriors, and added that he gives everything to those he favors. In other words, speaking with him first requires catching his interest, and the Tiger King asks for the protagonist's name. Randolph thinks being called strange by him is the greatest compliment, and it seems he has successfully drawn the king's attention, so he answers that his name is Randolph. The Tiger King thinks he cannot see Randolph's form, but he can feel the mystery surrounding him. Randolph looked into Medusa's eyes, and perhaps the Tower of Mysteries granted him the authority to completely break mysteries apart. His own mystery trembles before Randolph's, and that reaction reveals the difference in species rank. Possessing such an unknown mystery means Randolph's rank is higher. That does not always equal greater strength, but if he cleared the mythical trial, he is far from ordinary, making the tiger unsure whether he can suppress his urge to fight. Randolph senses the king is losing control and warns that if they fight, Cramdell will vanish from the map, so he should not act recklessly. The Tiger King admits Randolph is right, saying he cannot destroy his own territory. He then asks whether Randolph cleared the Tower of Mysteries, and Randolph answers that it was nothing remarkable. Tiger King asks what the Hidden Floors trial was, and the protagonist asks whether that information comes for free. There is something he wants to find, and he asks for the king's cooperation as Cramdell's ruler. The White King says that is a minor issue. If Randolph seeks something, he may search freely, since no monster would dare harm one of the 5 great warriors. Randolph says he has no desire to serve the king, while thinking he should avoid getting more involved than necessary. The Tiger King tells him he has misunderstood. The great warrior is not a subordinate, but someone with status equal to his own. They merely offer him respect. Randolph thinks they are weaker than the White King, but all are level 12. Since the classless share the same title, they should not cause trouble. Of course, that is only how the White King sees it. Those warriors behave like loyal subordinates, likely using the title to strengthen their forces. Either way, Randolph cannot turn this down. The tiger welcomes the strange crow. He declares the rise of a new pillar of Cramdell. Somewhere else in the city, Randolph's group of 3 meets the Snake Queen. She asks why the crow has called her out in private. Randolph says that as ruler of Necra Valley and queen of the lifeless, she has something he seeks, so he asks for her cooperation. The queen says she has no time for petty matters and tells him to ask another warrior, but Randolph reminds her they promised cooperation under the White King's name. The queen asks what he could be seeking that requires invoking the king, and why he came specifically to her. Randolph says that the thing he has been searching for in this land is none other than her existence itself, because he has become very fond of the girl. Isabella and Isaac are shocked, while the protagonist asks to visit her sanctuary. The Snake Queen then calls out to him. She asks whether he has become one of those twisted pillars and come to claim her. Though she doubts he is ambitious, she warns him not to misunderstand. Randolph asks what kind of nonsense she is saying. He explains that he heard she deeply understands art, and he has been searching for an artist exactly like her. They say her sanctuary is filled with beautiful artwork, and he wants to see the cadaver art kept inside. Just before they leave the Garden of Knights, Andrew asks whether he wants him to issue an indulgence. Protagonist confirms it, and Andrew asks what he plans to use it for. He would gladly give one to him, but the rules do not allow it to be granted so easily. Randolph thinks that, as expected, he cannot receive a quest reward without paying a price. In any case, he does not intend to take it for free and wants to make a proposal, because he will bring Andrew's daughter back. Back when played Pangania as Wilhelm, Andrew once asked him to purify his daughter, Andasar, who had become an eldritch. Purification worked, but she could not regain her human form and passed away shortly afterward. Not long after that, her body was stolen, taking her away from Andrew once more. Later, when he arrived in Cramdell and Wilhelm's body, he learned that the Serpent Queen had taken it. Randolph says he knows where her body is and will take responsibility for returning it. Of course, he must recover one indulgence and will need another to retrieve Andasar. One is for her recovery, while the other will serve as his reward. Back in the present, Randolph says he wishes to see her artwork, and the Serpent Queen trembles. She says she gladly welcomes him, adding that she never knew he had an interest in art. On the outskirts of the city of Cramdell, inside the Serpent Queen's castle, she tells him to relax, saying no thanks are needed because any monster who appreciates art is always welcome. Isaac says first it was the White King's sanctuary, and now it is the Serpent Queen's. He is experiencing everything he never wanted in one day, while Isabella tells him to adapt. The young man says she is far too calm about everything, and she answers that she has served the saint much longer. She tells him not to forget she is second in command. For reference, Hudson is third, and Isaac comes after him. The Raycutter thinks he had imagined the Serpent Queen as a madwoman who turned a whole city into a field of remains. Yet she does not appear quite as hostile as he expected. She then reveals the view of her sanctuary. Dozens of human arms are arranged into a tower. A mask made from a human face also rests beneath a frame. The girl asks for his opinion, saying she dislikes boasting but feels deeply proud of these pieces. Then she asks him to please share his honest thoughts. A heavy pressure instantly settles over the room. Isaac asks what kind of revolting hobby this is. The Serpent Queen appears right in front of him. She asks whether he is mocking her art. Isaac says he did not mean it that way and apologizes at once, adding that disturbances are forbidden in Cramdell. The Serpent Queen says the 5 great warriors hold the same rank as the White King, so dealing with one of them is no issue. She says if he believed Cramdell's rules would shield him, he is wrong. But Randolph interrupts, saying a master's art is always hard for ordinary minds to grasp. He says he can feel her art echoing deep inside his heart. He says it is only natural for an ignorant fool to fail to understand, then tells her to ignore the idiot and show her works. Serpent Queen turns toward him and asks if he truly means that. Then she says she will present them immediately. Isaac instantly shrinks back in fear. The Serpent Queen shows him leather made from people who invaded Cramdell, explaining that she tried to preserve the colors of the blood. Now she moves on to the next piece she plans to show him. Randolph asks what it is. She answers that the piece is still unfinished, but he may take a look. Then she opens the curtains for him. She explains that it is the body of an Eldritch she happened to obtain. She is trying to create a Dullahan from this rare body, and Randolph realizes he has finally found Andazar. The girl says the material is like an unreachable treasure and simply refuses to stabilize. She can only make art from fully purified bodies, but for some reason, its frenzied state will not fade. If she even attempts to work on it, the energy spirals wildly out of control like this. That is why she calls it an unreachable prize, wondering what use there is for material she cannot handle. Randolph asks if she could give it to him, since she has no intention of using it. She says if he can manage a body that even she could not control, she will gladly hand it over, and the protagonist moves his hand. He thinks the Serpent Queen failed to stabilize it because Andazar is not an ordinary body. She is an anomaly existing somewhere between human and monster. The misdeeds she committed as an Eldritch must have built up as suppression once she returned to human form. When a humanoid character gathers too much suppression, they fall into a frenzied state. In other words, the effect on her will only disappear once that suppression is lowered, so he declares that he absolves the sins of Andasar. This can be lowered through an indulgence. The suppression gauge empties, and the condition is lifted. The Serpent Queen thinks she knew he was no ordinary man, yet wonders how he purified material even she could not handle. She wonders whether he possesses not only artistic insight, but also the power to create. The Queen of the Lifeless has always lived in solitude, because her art is too deep for others to understand. Talented critics may appear from time to time, but they can do nothing to ease her deep loneliness. Critics cannot share either her suffering or the joy she feels in creation. The idea that no one would ever share her world was frightening to the Queen. The crow before her is the only one of his kind, and she wonders why he has appeared only now. Randolph obtains a piece of Andasar's body. Then he looks at the Serpent Queen, unable to understand what she is talking about. A month has passed since monsters invaded Earth and dimensional warriors appeared. During that time, a massive forum emerged and surpassed 1 billion views. Dimensional warriors now spend their time responding to posts there. They share detailed guides on handling future threats and what people should do when monsters appear. Eventually, even governments around the world begin recommending the community against the fear of the unknown. The information found there becomes their only hope, almost like a true survival manual. And the owner of this forum is treated almost like a holy figure, known as the Master. He was active even before the first invasion, recruited countless warriors, and used that foundation to build the largest player faction. With that influence, he negotiates directly with political leaders and major corporations worldwide, proving himself a sharp man who expands the community. Among the many seats of the council, the God of War Master is also counted among the 8 heroes. Black Star, the Lightning Emperor, asks whether Gracia has still not returned. The Nine-Tailed Fox says they did not come to America without reason. Ani tells them not to worry, since Gracia has vanished without warning before. Lucifer says the real issue is Randolph, the suspected Wilhelm, who has disrupted the rankings again. Maxim asks whether they plan to keep letting him do as he pleases. Master replies that they will deal with him eventually, but before that, they must prepare for the true invasion that is about to begin. If the invasions so far were only scouts from another dimension, then the real war will begin the moment the dimensional rift opens. When that happens, people will understand that neither the police nor the army can truly protect them. They will realize the only ones capable of saving them are the players. From now on, people will follow players instead of corporations or governments. Soon, the world will shift. The collapse has reached 9.1%, and when it reaches 10%, the first wall will break. Back in the castle, the Serpent Queen asks what magic he used, while Randolph thinks monsters differ from humans because they do not fall into frenzy. It makes sense. When a monster commits atrocities, its reputation increases, so there is no reason for frenzy to occur. He says asking about techniques is taboo among martial artists, but he will consider her situation. The Serpent Queen tells him to think carefully. The protagonist says that, as promised, he will take this work of art with him, but he wants to know where the head is since he ain't to return the body complete. He asks where the head went, since no artist would discard such valuable material carelessly. The queen says she wanted the piece whole, but had no choice. When she discovered the body, the head was already missing. She traced the energy to Cramdell's basement, but eventually gave up because entering was impossible. Randolph asks if even she, one of Cramdell's pillars, could not enter. The girl answers that no one on the continent can subjugate them, except for the Star Guardians. But because of a non-aggression pact, they were forced to withdraw. Randolph asks what they were doing there, and the girl says she does not know the details. Still, it seems Cramdell's special hot springs are somehow connected to the stars. However, a unique grade mystery covers the area like a veil, preventing even them from approaching the star, so they could only wait. As time passed, the gate of Cramdell came under the Star Guardian's control, which left the White King furious. But if the king is acting so carefully, the pact must be serious. She says it is unfortunate, but Randolph should forget about the head. Randolph asks if it is really not that simple. To him, the problem is easy to solve if he simply removes all of them. As he thinks about it, he remembers the moment he erased the worm mystery. Then he tells her to inform the White King that he will remove the intruders from Cramdell. One day later, in Crandall's basement, the Star Guardian Dramat and the Phoenix stand there as a voice asks if it is true, and whether he can truly destroy that Veil Arcana. The voice asks how a corpse crow could possibly do it, whether Dramat can stand by what he said. If that turns out to be false, he will face serious consequences. A few hours earlier at Cramdell's Central Hot Springs, Dramat says this is hard to believe. An ability that allows him to become a monster is astonishing, and Dramat asks whether Randolph is even human. He also asks how Randolph knew he was there, and Randolph says he heard some guardians were nearby and confirmed it through the administrators. Changing the topic, he asks if they gathered because of the 33rd star. Even though there should only be 32, Dramat confirms. There are 32 stars formed from fragments of Leah's body, but they suspect this new star. It may belong to Pina, the goddess of the sky. Since a 33rd star that never existed before has appeared, the guardians are taking turns guarding the area, and Randolph recalls that Pina was the youngest goddess. The current continent is the land that the goddess Pina lifted into the heavens, while the original ground was swallowed by the abyss. The theory was that the demon realm existed beneath it. Randolph asks whether becoming a star means the goddess lost her life, and Dramat says they gathered to confirm that. However, they are struggling because a unique grade arcana blocks the way like a veil. Randolph says that is exactly why he came to him, since he will handle that arcana for them. Dramat says an arcana is practically truth itself, making it impossible for anyone to destroy such a thing. Laughs at first, but then notices the protagonist's serious expression. He asks whether Randolph is truly being serious. Back in the present, he thinks even he finds it difficult to believe. Still, Randolph is not someone who bluffs without a reason. The Guardian asks why Randolph would help even if it is true, and Randolph says he has something to find, so everyone benefits in the end. The Guardian says that is acceptable. He asks why the others came as well, thinking he had warned them not to go near the star. White King is seated right in front of him. He tells him to calm down, saying they will not approach. They only came to watch because his guests failed to solve it, and the newest pillar will handle it. The Guardian calls him a pathetic hyena. He glares in contempt while releasing his energy. Randolph thinks the situation has already become a mess anyway, and it is troublesome, since it would be better to finish this quickly and send everyone away. So he places his hand against the wall of Arcana. He thinks to himself that it truly is a mystery. If the thing blocking the way is an Arcana, then its grade does not matter. It will not be a problem. The system states that destroying the first wall will begin the main quest. Randolph thinks this makes him look suspicious, but there is no turning back now. The barrier starts to crack. The cracks spread and break into more pieces. The Tiger King reacts in surprise and says this is interesting. The Guardian turns around, apparently thinking the same. Everything turns into scattered fragments before the flying protagonist. He has broken through the first wall. Randolph thinks the obstructing Arcana problem is solved, and this must be the 33rd star everyone mentioned. Now that he has found it, he wants to learn what kind of main quest has begun. But something else shocks him even more. An armored knight appears on horseback. It advances without the slightest hesitation. The system announces that Pangenia's collapse has reached 10, and with that the knight awakens its energy. The mission is to eliminate the boss of the dimensional rift. It stands before the Guardians and the protagonist, and so the mission begins. Isabella then calls out to the Saint. The Serpent Queen asks whether he is alright. Randolph thinks he was certain he had ended him during the Demon Realm expedition, yet somehow, he managed to slip his way here. Aharam, the first king of Hell, the Guardian. Aharam remarks that the star Arcana suppressing them has disappeared. They must prepare to cross into the other dimension, because the dimensional rift will open once he takes Pina's heart. The end times have finally arrived. The system warns that if King Aram is not eliminated within 30 days, every rift will open and ruin will appear. The people of planet Earth look up at the sky, wondering what it is, and they wonder what is about to happen. A secretary cries out to the master that the collapse rate has finally reached 10%, and the first rift appears ready to open. He begs him to give orders, but the master says there is no need to hurry. The Demon King cannot possibly appear in the very first rift, so their preparations are more than enough. Not until this city is swallowed by grief and despair, and when they finally plead for the players to save them, that will be when they make their move. The world will fall into the players' hands, but the system announces that the mission is already underway. Its progress is rising with every passing second. The master wonders how a raid has already begun when the rift has not even opened, and he demands to know what is going on. Back in Pangania, the progress reaches 17% as Aram is struck down. He is hit once more by the Guardian of the Stars. Aram says this cannot be possible and questions how he could be overwhelmed so easily. Reduced to such helplessness, his reign of chaos is already coming to an end. In Pangania, three beings are commonly called the strongest: the Demon King, the White King, and Wilhelm. People even joke that only those three could defeat one another. However, that idea only applies to Pangania's existing races, excluding NPCs and users. Among the system-made units that protect the stars, another monster exists who can rival them. The strongest guardian, the giant of evil extermination, asks how Aram dares to desire the goddess's symbol. Randolph sits down, thinking no one would have expected the veil-like arcana to contain Aram, and with the guardians present, things became far easier. Especially with that massive one on their side. The giant of evil extermination is responsible for guarding Wilhelm's final star. Now that he is helping them, he is one of the most dependable allies they could ask for. Then the tiger approaches, saying it is unfortunate. That huge fellow ended everything far too easily. It seems they will not get the chance to see his true strength here. Randolph realizes he is being tested and says he only intended to help until the Arcana was destroyed. The Tiger King thinks Randolph is sharper than he appears and did not fall for the bluff after all, which he finds disappointing. But then a scream echoes from far away. Aram drops to his knees cursing him. The main mission to defeat the king of the dimensional rift is completed. Everyone says things are returning to normal and wonders why no monsters have appeared. In his room, the master thinks they were only one step away. He had gathered dozens of warriors for this day, yet it ended before they even had the chance to swing their weapons. He will never forgive Randolph, the only person who contributed to the main mission. His fury grows even stronger. Back in Pangania, everyone gathers together. The giant wonders whether that crow stopped the explosion. The white tiger's Randolph stopped an explosion even he could not control, so he can no longer doubt him. This is no longer simple curiosity, and he genuinely wants Randolph for himself. Isaac and Isabella rush toward the saint. Randolph thinks he has already leveled up, since the reward experience was extremely generous. The reward he received is a holy grail that can only be unsealed by a high priest of honor. Just then, a scream rings out. Aram calls him a bastard and demands to know what he has done. He orders him to return everything to normal, threatening to end him. Randolph thinks sealing Aram so easily was only possible because the evil giant had weakened him, but the skill itself is still incredible. He wonders if that is the sacred relic of the heaven-like great sage, which helps greatly, since now he only needs to find Andesar's head. So he asks whether Aram has seen the head of a Dullahan named Andesar. Aram spits at him, sneering that he will never tell. Protagonist orders the golden tiara to tighten its hold. In the end, Aram hands over Andesar's head. The protagonist says Aram had it all along, and Aram replies that he kept it because he thought he might create an undead with it. Randolph thinks that as the king of the lifeless, Aram can control them, so it must have been mixed in while he gathered bodies for his army. He then asks Isaac to take good care of it. The giant calls out to the corpse crow. He says that from the barrier until now, he owes Randolph a great debt, and he offers his thanks. Randolph thinks he never imagined he would live to hear this giant thank him. Of course, if the giant knew he was Wilhelm, he would blame him as the fool who failed to protect his star, so hiding his identity is best. Randolph tells him to forget it, saying he wanted something in return. If the giant is grateful, he should give him the star. The giant says that regardless, unlike the fool who lost his star, Randolph is a very useful crow. He says he will repay the debt one day, and as for the star, its fate will be decided after they recover it. Randolph thinks it is a pity, since he wants to take it for himself, but he cannot afford to turn them into enemies. Then the guardian raises his hand. The star begins to release its light. Its glow spreads across the entire area and drifts toward the protagonist. It comes to a stop directly before Randolph. Then, all at once, it enters his body on its own. Memories rise from the time he was Wilhelm, when the Demon King said it was his fatal mistake. For a 5-star transcendent without any divine blessing to corner him so completely, without the goddess's authority, he could damage his body, but he could never erase his essence. And because of that, the Demon King would claim him as his new vessel. Then he wraps him in energy, just as Serengeti had described before. After that, however, Wilhelm sinks into darkness. Lifeless hands begin stretching toward him. With his consciousness gone, he simply continues to fall. Then a voice says it never imagined. He could grow so powerful without a goddess's divine blessing. If his body is taken completely now, this world and every linked dimension could collapse from the destruction. So she pleads with that being, the existence beyond the rift connected to the Night King. All she can do now is offer her life for one brief moment, and she prays that he may return to this place once more. Thus he is consumed by the goddess, leading to the result seen before. Some return because of their own desires, others come back because of the bonds they carry, and some return to fulfill their personal goals. They all come back for different reasons, yet she still hopes that at least he will always be someone who loves Pangania, and so the Demon King wishes for Pina to lose her life. Back in the present, Isabella asks whether he is awake. Randolph realizes that this must be the goddess's memory. The guardian remarks that he has been chosen. What appeared just now was Pina's star, meaning she selected him. The twin goddesses are one, so they are family now, but the Tiger King calls it complete nonsense. He warns him not to try any tricks with the 5 great warriors. The giant says the moment the star acknowledged him, he became a guardian, and someone like him cannot cancel the goddess's authority. Tiger says that does not matter, because what matters now is that he has decided he wants him. Isaac asks if they should leave quickly, while Isabella says the situation seems to have become complicated. Then a voice calls out to the protagonist. The Cobra Queen tells him that he should stay by her side. Dramat calls out to his master. He tells him to come over at once, because that place is dangerous. Meanwhile, the Guardian and the White Tiger begin arguing, and Randolph says they are talking nonsense, asking why they are deciding his future. The White Tiger King says he already agreed to become a great warrior. The giant insists that becoming a guardian is his destined path. Randolph says if they truly want to take him with them, then they should prove which side can offer him the better benefit. Back at the Tiger King's castle, he says this is absurd. He cannot believe Randolph is negotiating for a position among the great warriors. Randolph says he can leave if he dislikes it, and the Tiger King quickly tells him to return, saying that is not what he meant. He then asks whether he is satisfied with the Star Guardian's offer, and the protagonist replies that it was reasonable. They agreed to grant him a title. Randolph thinks that is a decent reward, since gaining a title will make it easier to earn stars. The Tiger says that reward is as poor as they are, and he is nothing like those stingy fools. If Randolph joins him, he will receive any city he wants. Naturally, Essentially, cities in the Arthon Empire or under the Black King's protection are excluded. Randolph understands that this means he can choose any city outside those two areas, even if it must be taken by force. Though he lost the power struggle to the White King, the Black King still rules the south, and beyond him lies Arhon, the continent's only empire. Apart from those two, no faction can withstand these monsters. So if he chooses now, he can use their power in any city he wants. It is an outstanding offer, showing how highly they recognize him, but on the other hand, it also means they see him as a threat of equal value, and the king has no intention of handing him over. He smiles, realizing the negotiations are finished. If he hesitates any longer, he will only lose their trust. So he accepts the offer. After he accepts the White King's proposal, everything moves quickly. The king formally declares him a warrior, making him part of Cramdal. Things may become awkward with the Star Guardians, but he decides not to think about that today. Finally, Andasar's body, his original goal, is delivered by the Serpent Queen, and preparations begin to return it to Andrew. Randolph says this is far too much, and they did not need to see him off in person, but the White King says it is nothing. He hopes Randolph finishes his business quickly so they can meet again soon. Randolph turns to leave, and the system announces that he has gained the White King's recognition, activating teleportation through the authority of one of the 5 great warriors. He says he is leaving, while the system raises his honor for the achievement. Then he moves to the designated point in the Garden of Knights, in the center of that barren land. Isaac says he really was human after all, and Randolph replies that nothing has changed, reminding him not to forget his promise to serve for a year. Isabella then says, speaking of that, she wants to know where he put Aharam. Randolph pulls out a single strand of hair. He says he sealed him away for a while because he was too noisy, and chose to carry him since he may prove useful for now. While they are talking, it seems they have already arrived. They return to the Garden of Knights. He walks through the city once more. Isabella says the atmosphere feels even heavier than before. She is certain Hudson must have been working hard to restore the city. Then Isaac notices that something is different. Several people have been publicly punished and displayed in the squares. All of them are civilians from this city. Randolph is left frozen by the sight. He remembers the night he once endured. Someone else is in the same condition. Miss May, the woman he saved, she has suffered the same fate as well. Everyone who had stood with him after he saved the city, they all ended up this way, while only Andrew remains on the ground praying. Randolph wonders what happened in this place. Andrew turns around and calls out to his brother. He asks if he has finally returned, then tells him he cannot remain here and must hide. Randolph calls his name again. He says he wants to know exactly what happened in this town. Andrew explains that Maxim led the Kaiser mercenaries in an attack on the town. As he already knows, the Lord had built up debts, especially with Duke Sion, and Maxim arrived as the Duke's messenger and successor. Maxim said he would seize the territory if they could not pay, but Hudson offered to repay the debt for them. Maxim merely looked ahead with contempt. After all, he was one of the 8 heroes. Weiser asks what he means, since they said they would pay. But Maxim asks what he is talking about. The person Duke Sion lent money to was the Lord, not the merchant, so the debt remains unpaid. Hudson asks how he can say something so unreasonable. Weiser understands that his goal from the start was to seize the territory, so he places a hand on his sword and tells him to leave that place at once. All the knights draw their swords, and he says this monument honors the heroes who gave everything to protect their loved ones. It is a monument for heroes, not something Maxim can touch however he likes. Maxim says that sounds strange and asks whether there have always been this many heroes. As far as he knows, no heroes exist beyond the 8. Then he releases his power. Back in the present, Andrew says the battle ended before he understood what was happening. The knights and townspeople fought desperately, but they were completely outmatched. After everything ended, he heard that the only reason more lives were not lost was because of Mr. Hudson. Hudson had knelt before Maxim. He said he would pay if money was what they wanted, and begged them to stop, but Maxim asked what had come over him, since his duke did not need money. Hudson says that is not what he means, and offers to pay double the principal if they grant him 30 more days. Maxim is surprised and admits the offer sounds tempting. He calls Hudson a fool, saying he can simply take everything anyway, so why should he accept? He says that even if he does this, he doubts someone like Hudson could resist. Maxim asks if he feels like handing over the money right now. Hudson says he has misunderstood. He is a merchant. He may pay for a proper deal, but he would rather lose his life than give away his money for nothing. All he asks is 30 days for their lord to return. For those 30 days, no one will touch the people or Serengeti. That is his only condition for the deal. Andrew says his brother must tell him whether they truly are heroes who devoted themselves to the continent and humanity. But Randolph is swallowed by fury. The star within him burns even brighter. His heart pounds fiercely, filled with overwhelming rage. The heart of the Iron Monarch allows wrath to remain, for this is a matter worthy of a monarch's fury. The mission of the iron-blooded monarch begins. Before a massive castle, a mercenary says he is unbearably bored, and his companion answers that, because of the captain, they are stuck here for an entire month. They are only following orders, though though maybe a reward will come later. Then he notices something. Randolph walks toward them by himself. The guards wonder what they are seeing. One orders him to halt and demands his identity, saying he does not look like a local, and no resident would be foolish enough to come near them. He asks why Randolph is sneaking around this place. Randolph simply asks where Maxim is. The mercenary asks if the captain is his friend, adding that he must be wishing for trouble to speak of him so casually. But before he can finish, Randolph strikes him down. He cries for help, yet Randolph does not stop. His companion shouts, asking whether Randolph knows who they are. Randolph says he will ask one final time where Maxim is. Now that the first guards have fallen, the mercenaries begin gathering outside. They shout for everyone to come, saying he is on the first floor. They also yell that he must be dealt with immediately. Randolph draws his sword and keeps moving forward. Every man who blocks his path is brought down. He defeats a bald man without taking even a single hit. Then he easily lands a blow straight to his face. Soldiers continue rushing toward him, but one after another they collapse before him, unable to resist. Randolph keeps advancing after cutting through everyone in his way. His face remains fixed in a cold, furious expression. He arrives on the castle's second floor. He looks over the room before him. Meanwhile, a few bandits hide behind him. At last, he crosses the room. One bandit swings an axe at him. In an instant, the bandit is taken down. He is thrown aside, leaving only one remaining. Frozen with fear, that last one is also struck by the sword. One of the mercenaries is left stunned by the scene. He begs to be spared and calls out his captain's name, but Randolph silences him before he can finish. Then Maxim appears behind him. Maxim attempts to slash him, but Randolph evades the attack, and he grabs Maxim by the shirt and drives him hard into the ground. Randolph aims his sword at him, then forces the blade toward his mouth once again. The entire scene is stained by the aftermath, yet Maxim is still alive, sustained by his demonic worshipper trait. Dark energy begins flowing through his body. A moment later, it sends Randolph flying back. The protagonist crashes heavily against the ground. Maxim says Hudson was trying to buy time, which made him wonder whether there was a backup plan. And it turns out that backup was the protagonist. His contingency plan stands there, wrapped in a grim aura. Randolph asks what his true motive was. If Maxim wanted money, he could have taken it quietly and left. If he wanted territory, he could have conquered the land instead, but he chose to ruin the people. Maxim asks if he needs a motive. He laughs and says he has none, because he needs no reason to end the week. If Randolph insists on an explanation, he will give one. They were weaklings who dared stand with the 8 heroes and build monuments to honor themselves. Randolph tells him not to call just anyone a hero, especially a coward who ran away at the very gate. Maxim thinks only they should know about that. He asks whether Randolph is the ghost. They had suspected Randolph's rookie might be him, and that he truly became a player, so Maxim uses level appraisal. He appraises the user's level and sees that it is 6. He says he expected Randolph to hide somewhere and quietly build his strength, never imagining that Randolph would come after him first. As he grabs Randolph's head, he says Randolph has become arrogant, intoxicated by past glory. He hurls him through a wall, mocking how weak he has become. Then he rushes in with his knife, speaking about the price of arrogance. That price would be Randolph's life, but he slips away from the attack. Randolph asks whether he is finished talking. At that moment, Maxim feels an overwhelming pressure. Randolph says Maxim should have taken the money and left, and at the very least, he should never have touched those people. Because of his foolishness, the Kaiser mercenaries will meet their end today. Maxim says he threw Marquis Weiser and the others into the dungeons, and they might collapse before Randolph can even finish him. But Randolph says that will not happen. Weiser is watching from the window. Randolph explains that he sent reliable people to that place. He then activates Star Pierce, letting it flow through his body for 70 seconds, and tells Maxim the fugitive. At this time, there will be no escape for him. He had once been nothing more than an ordinary human, not exceptional, yet never lacking anything, perfectly average in every way. He was born, worked, and kept living that way, and even if he disappeared one day, he was so ordinary that the world would hardly change at all. Even inside the game, that truth remained the same. Then one day he became a player. Maxim wonders what this feeling is. There was no way an ordinary person like him could enter the game, take part in battles, and even complete main quests. While he was trapped in this world, unable to log out, that thing appeared before him. It was a demon, a race that existed only within the lore of Pangenia. It was a class users could never obtain, a rare fortune granted to only one player. The moment he seized that chance, he became special and gained his wealth, until Wilhelm asked whether he was the leader of the Kaiser mercenaries. He said he wanted to hire him for the coming expedition to the Demon Realm, offering 1,200 gold coins as payment. Maxim says that amount could hire 20 high-level mercenaries, but Wilhelm tells him he has no need for anyone else. The reward is meant for Maxim alone, since filling the party with mediocre trash would only waste their supplies. He takes that response as an agreement. Maxim thinks he has finally been acknowledged, because the strongest man on the server needs him. He wonders what will happen if they defeat defeat the Demon King, and whether he will remain a player or return to who he once was. Back in the present, demonic energy begins to fill his body. Maxim asks whether a weakling like Randolph really thinks he can get away, and he charges straight at the protagonist. He strikes forward with his fists. The force of the blow is powerful enough to shatter the glass. Randolph turns aside, blood running from his ears. Even so, he pulls back with quick, sharp steps. Maxim tells him to remember his place. His demonic energy takes shape as spears. They fly toward the protagonist with terrifying speed. Randolph summons the Supreme Iron Sword. He starts cutting through the spears without difficulty. Then he equips the boots of Hermes and Michaela's armor. The set effect activates, along with an appearance adjusted to his level. At last, he uses the acceleration skill. He releases a slash that tears through Maxim. First, he cuts through the monster's legs. It attempts to fight back, moving into counterattack. But the protagonist is already upon him. Maxim says that attacks like that will not work on him. The protagonist is shocked by his reaction. He is caught by tentacles formed from demonic energy. Outside the castle, countless tentacles can be seen spreading out. Isaac wonders what that thing could be. Isabella cries out in shock, calling for the saint. Everything around them is packed with sharp, stake-like tentacles. Maxim starts breathing hard. He screams that Randolph has deflected every one of his attacks. The protagonist says an attack built only on raw power, without feints or precision to strike blind spots, will never succeed. Maxim rushes forward, shouting for him to shut up and saying Randolph was only buzzing around while running from him. Randolph says he was simply checking whether he could finish it yet, and he had not expected Maxim's level to be this low. He pulls Maxim's head back and asks whether he has ever fought anyone truly on his level. Maxim tells him not to speak so arrogantly, insisting he is not inferior even to those people. But the protagonist calls him weak and steps forward again. He cuts him down, then strikes again and again without letting up. He keeps going until only a small remnant remains. Maxim is left stunned by what happened. The protagonist says he has located the demonic heart. Maxim thinks he has to restore his body immediately. Randolph pins it with his sword and asks if this is all he gained from selling his soul to a demon. Maxim begs him to wait, admitting that he lost his way. He apologizes for what happened during the expedition, saying he acted that way because he feared losing this power. He says Randolph must have been a nobody in reality to spend so much time on a hopeless game like this, so he should understand him. Randolph says Maxim has crossed too many lines to be forgiven and has caused far too many deaths. Maxim argues that they were only NPCs, not even real players. Randolph says they were no different from them. They feel pain and sorrow in the same way. As two people who entered this world as players, they both know those beings are no longer mere NPCs. Now it is time for Maxim to answer for what he has done. The system warns that his abilities will vanish if the demonic heart is destroyed, and he refuses to return to being powerless. But the protagonist brings everything to an end. Terrible pain fills Maxim's eyes, yet in the end he is simply cut apart. The protagonist gains the Demon Hunter achievement and takes the scale fragment from him. The Ironblood Monarch trait evolves into the heart of the Eternal Monarch, and the mission is completed.